Super Jump. Super Jump is the energy for success every day. Super Jump is the most powerful generator of positive energy for life. Dedication. This book is dedicated to the world's first intellect trainers. Those fearless heroes, those enthusiasts who are unafraid to save humanity from self-destruction. Briefly about the book. This book is about how ordinary, everyday people just like you can turn on the most powerful generator of positive energy within themselves, and use that good and radiant energy to give themselves a new, happy life. Translator's foreword. Dear reader, you have in your hands, or on your computer or handheld device, etc., the most recent and most important publication of Vladimir Dovgin. Mr. Dovgin is quite well known in his native Russia, having undertaken several business ventures there in the past. In a market where goods were not always of the highest quality, the businesses that Mr. Dovgin was involved were known for producing merchandise that was quite reputable. Today, Mr. Dovgin brings the same characteristic attention and care to his newest and most important venture, the fast-growing phenomenon known as Super Jump. It is a great pleasure for me to play a small part in introducing Super Jump to the English-speaking world. Super Jump illustrates and represents Mr. Dovgin's personal initiative to give back to the world which we all live in. Through the experience and knowledge which he has gained throughout the course of his rather remarkable life, he illustrates how it is possible to both improve one's own mental, physical and material well-being, and also to make the world a better place for those generations that will follow ours. This book shows how and why this is not only possible, but actually quite practical. I owe my own involvement in this undertaking to a rather remarkable woman named Natalia Yankina. It was she who introduced me to Mr. Dovgin's business partner, Oleg Ryzkov, and through him, to Vladimir Dovgin himself. As I had already prepared to make a trip to Russia to present a book which I had written, Mr. Dovgin graciously invited me to visit him at his home in Moscow. Having found me fluent enough in Russian and capable of conveying his message to the English-speaking world, we were quite easily able to agree on together advancing the project which you are reading about right now. Therefore, I convey my thanks to Vladimir Dovgin, Oleg Ryzkov, Natalia Yankina, and countless others, for their trust and encouragement throughout the process of preparing this work for the English-speaking world. Read, ponder, and most of all, personally act on the text of this book, penned by a self-made son of a Siberian peasant of Ukrainian heritage. Think of those who will follow you. Vladimir Dovgin has had a materially successful and well-rounded life. He has traveled in a variety of high and oftentimes well-known circles. Nonetheless, as you will see throughout the text of Super Jump, he is a person who is simple and direct in nature, true to his personal background, and one who speaks directly from the heart. Brian Dimler. Preface. Happiness. Man himself is a generator of happiness. Our task is not to seek or to achieve happiness, but to generate it every day, and to generously fill ourselves, our homes, our entire world with happiness. How can we do this? Let Super Jump be the ignition key that turns on your own personal generator of happiness. Chapter 1. My Cinderella Story. It's not easy for people living in first-world democratic societies to understand how we, the downtrodden, half-starved, unhappy children of the USSR, lived. To get an idea of what my childhood was like, one only needs to look at how people in North Korea today are starving and suffering. North Korea today resembles a large concentration camp, surrounded by barbed wire. People are shot for attempting to escape from that hell. The USSR was the same, one large prison camp, surrounded by barbed wire. If a person wanted to run away from that communist paradise, he would also be shot down, very likely killed. The unfortunates who survived an unsuccessful escape attempt would be thrown into the gulag for many long years. The first limitation that the communist state placed upon us was that we had no right to leave the camp, we had no right to live where we wanted, we never traveled abroad, we didn't even know how people in other countries lived. If we could imagine a world view of the average North Korean citizen, our senses would be surprised by the sincere belief that our country is surrounded by enemies, that North Korea is the best country in the world, that the leader is the very embodiment of kindness, wisdom and magnanimity. In my youth, my peers and I thought similarly. We had no idea how people in other societies lived. From dawn to dusk we were filled with propaganda that our country was the most advanced, the most just, the happiest, and we believed it, because we had no other sources of information. People who tried to bring in books and films which were banned by the authorities were immediately thrown into prison. Those of you who have read George Orwell's 1984 no doubt remember, war is peace, slavery is freedom. With total propaganda, total control of people's minds, it's very easy to turn them into zombies. The worst thing that happened in my country in 1917 was not the revolution. The French Revolution was no less bloody than the Russian Revolution. Many good people were killed, but in the Napoleonic Code it was spelled out quite clearly: private property is sacrosanct. What was the difference between the Russian and the French revolutions? In Russia, completely insane warlords, sadists and executioners destroyed the concept of private property, killed millions of dissenters, turned the country into a huge prison camp, and ruled over the hell that they created by means of fear. I very well remember how one engineer who had submitted a petition to withdraw from the Communist Party was sent to an insane asylum and kept pumped full of drugs, killing his personality and turning him into a vegetable. To know the truth about the tragedy which took place on 1/6 of the Earth's surface, I didn't need to read any history books. My grandfather, Vasily Solovyov, told me about it himself. When he was 12 years old, armed men came to his house one night, loaded everyone into carts, took them to a prison and killed them. My grandfather survived only because one of the soldiers took pity upon him, took him aside and whispered in his ear, "Run, Patson." And until that terrible night, my family had owned large gardens, windmills, a factory which produced vegetable oil, and a large number of horses. My grandfather remembered how, in shock and with tears in his eyes, he watched as the family's huge apple orchard simply cut down, destroyed. My grandmother, Natalia Popova, also told me the terrible truth of the Stalinist repression. Her father was a priest, who was arrested and sent to waste away in the infamous Solovetsky prison. The only letter which the family received from him consisted of a plea for help. As my great-grandfather died of hunger, he wrote, "Please, send me, at least, some potato peels. I'm starving." My own dear father was a witness to the terrible Holodomor, which killed millions of Ukrainians. In the year in which the Soviet government decided to starve the rebellious Ukrainians, the harvest was very plentiful. Despite this abundance and rich grain harvest, the communists purposefully and specifically brought terrible, starving death to millions of people. While people were swollen with hunger, eating grass, the communists sold trainloads of grain to the West. There exist many diaries of people who lived through and described these tragic events, who watched as ships overloaded with grain embarked day after day, to the West. My father grew up with only his mother, his father had died young. To survive, my father had to steal what little grain he could by night. He had to risk his freedom and his life, sneaking into the granary after dark, putting grain into his pockets and bringing it home to a hungry mother. The complete truth about that terrible time is captured in one episode about which my dad told me. It was always very quiet at night in the Ukrainian village where he lived, and possible to hear a wagon moving anywhere throughout the village. While making his way into the granary one night, Dad suddenly heard a cart drive up to the gate on the opposite side of the barn. Curiosity overcame fear, and he slowly crawled to where he was able to see the chairman of the collective farm, the main man in their village, together with a guard load of few sacks of grain in the cart. And as my father told me, a loaded cart and an empty cart sounded completely different from one another at night. The very next day, that chairman of the collective farm came to speak at the school which my father attended, and with mean, glazed eyes, he lectured the students about how it was bad to steal, that they mustn't steal so much as a blade of grass from the collective farm field, for this would put them in prison, get them shot. At night, my father, a schoolboy, had seen this scoundrel load an entire cart with sacks of grain and take them home, and in the morning he spoke to the students and preached to them about honesty and respect for the law. My father also told me that Stalin had forbidden the villagers to possess passports, identification papers. A starving man from the countryside could not simply move to the city to look for work, as he did not have a passport. Any police officer could arrest him for leaving his village, and not just arrest him, but send him to the terrible, cold prison camps. In the huge prison known as the USSR, there were even more terrible prisons inside, in which millions of people died of hunger and suffering. Communism can be described in a few words: madness, lies and fear. Look at North and South Korea. See how the talented and hard-working Korean people live on opposite sides of the 58th parallel. In North Korea, as in the USSR, and in South Korea, Samsung, Hyundai, freedom, progress, law and justice. But this I understand today. In my childhood, we were like little bio-robots, whose young, defenseless minds were brainwashed by sophisticated propaganda from morning to night. How badly we lived can be understood from one simple example. I never saw apples until I was 6 years old. Our distant relatives sent a parcel from Ukraine to Arify Pavlovich, a remote village in the Siberian taiga, and at the age of 6 I was surprised to learn that apples existed on Earth. I first tasted bananas when I was 16 years old, and was equally shocked to know that there was such a fruit in the world. From my childhood, I remember constant queues for bread, butter and milk. Disposable packaging was practically non-existent in the USSR, and we always lived hand to mouth. A normal day for me began with taking the large metal can and a handful of small change that my mother had left for me, and, still sleepy in the early morning, walking to a shop where milk was sold from a huge barrel. There was always a queue in the cold, and I would pour a few liters of milk into the can and carefully carry it home. Of course, Moscow was much better supplied. Muscovites could afford to buy meat, sausage and even oranges, but such conditions existed only in Moscow. Any citizen of the USSR who visited Moscow always returned with food. The trains which departed from Moscow were jokingly referred to as sausage trains. Our diet was very poor, the main staples being potatoes and bread, with very little, and very infrequently, butter. We would get meat which was fit to eat, at best, once a month. I'm well aware that the inhabitants of free, democratic societies, with their crowded and well-stocked supermarkets cannot understand and imagine how we lived, or rather did not live, but survived, existed, clung to life. In the USSR there was never enough food, clothing, or medicine. An ordinary, cheap car was the ultimate luxury, the ultimate dream of millions of people. Human life and health in the Soviet Union were worthless, and we had no understanding of concepts such as freedom of thought, religion and human dignity. But even in a prison or a concentration camp, there are those who receive more rations, and those who receive less. I was born to a poor, working-class family, in the small taiga village of Arify Pavlovich. Arify Pavlovich was essentially a small railway station, which existed to provide coal and water for the locomotives traversing the Siberian railways. About 2,000 people lived in our village, or rather, did not live, but survived. Despite the hellish domestic conditions and the lack of food, the people in the Far East were very good, very open, very human. As it was in the days of the Soviet Union, so it is now. The farther away from Moscow, the simpler, the more honest, the kinder the people. I encountered my first challenge immediately at birth. I came out of my mother's womb not breathing, with the tangled umbilical cord wrapped around my neck. I was practically born dead, and at some point during the time that the midwife was trying to revive me, spanking my bottom and dunking me in cold, icy water, God apparently made the decision as to whether this scamp would be allowed to live or not. But, thank God, I came to life, I believe, for some important reason. To my great misfortune, however, I was born a very sickly child and suffered from congenital dyslexia, a condition in which the afflicted has trouble remembering the most basic things. For example, if I were to write out a page of text even today, I would realistically make about 100 mistakes, simply because my mind has problems with its powers of recall. It is now very clear that the disease of dyslexia can be treated, but in Soviet times, there were no school psychologists. Every day I received very poor grades, and my unhappy school years can only be described by one word: hell. Many of my teachers would constantly make me to feel that I was some kind of subhuman, an idiot, an imbecile. One mathematics teacher was particularly successful in this. A large woman with a physique that resembled that of a thick caterpillar, she would persistently squeeze her way through the rows of desks to berate me in front of the entire class with particular zeal. "Dovgan, you're an idiot. You're a disgrace to the class. You're a disgrace to the school. You should be expelled from this school. You don't deserve to sit in this class." The worst part of this experience was that my simple parents, very good and kind people who truly loved me, as most Soviet people did, deferred greatly to teachers. And, of course, my father could not know that a disease such as dyslexia even existed, that the problem was not laziness or a lack of understanding, but that I just could not remember elementary information. As my father had grown up in a village, the only way to raise youngsters was through beatings, the stick, a slap, the belt. Just as the previous generation of parents around the world regularly beat their children and students, this pedagogical, sadistic, terrible tradition was passed down to my father. At the end of a school day, I, already wounded by humiliation and insults, would reluctantly make my way home with lowered head and slumping shoulders. I would know in my child's heart that when my father would come from work and see my school diary with its new and routinely poor grades, that he would fly into a rage, grab a belt and beat me so that everyone in our section of the 9-floor block of flats would hear my screams. And so it went. I grew up like a hunted cub, my entire childhood passing between the hammer and the anvil. On one hand, the pain and mental scarring which I was awarded daily by the school, and on the other hand, the insults and beatings at home. If the teachers and my parents had known that there was such a disease as dyslexia, that I had learning problems not because I was deficient or chronically lazy, my childhood very likely would have passed quite differently. In our understanding of the world, context is everything. My older brother, Valentine, was still alive at that time. Unlike me, he was an excellent student, a very gifted person, proper and disciplined. Even as a youth, he had secured patents for inventions. Against the background of my hard-working, bright, honest and brilliant brother, my own grades humiliated me even more. If my parents and teachers were proud of and admired my older brother, I was seen as a complete disappointment. My father often used to say to me, "I look at you, and I can't understand it. You're not an idiot, not a fool. There is something good in you, you little dummy." When I graduated from high school, I was absolutely sure that I was a subhuman, an imbecile, an idiot, a loser. To me, my classmates who received top grades were as demigods, geniuses living on Mount Olympus. Success such as they had achieved seemed completely unattainable to me. Several times, I seriously contemplated ending my own life. Humiliated at school, beaten by my father, I would watch as buses would pull up to the stop, and imagine how I would jump under an onrushing bus to end all of my suffering. But, pity for my mother kept me from going through with any such plan. I would think of my kind, loving mother who would suffer and grieve for me. This realization of how my suicide would affect my beloved mother probably saved my life. I honestly understand that my father always loved me very much, too, despite the harsh, traditional idea of discipline that he visited upon me, which he, his father and his grandfather had all experienced. Beat, flog, stand in the corner. These lasting, bleeding scars left upon my heart from childhood remained until I was 35 years old. The Soviet Union, the evil empire, had collapsed. I had gone into business, achieved success, become a millionaire, in US dollars, that is. I remember very well one day in the 1990s, when I was relaxing with my friends in a cafe. After they had expressed their admiration for my achievements, I said to them, quite honestly, "Guys, you know, I am not developing, personally. I still struggle with all of those complexes I picked up when I was a child." I was 35 years old, I had started a family and had a child of my own. I was a successful entrepreneur, but in the back of my mind I would still hear those words. "You're a loser, you're an idiot, you're an imbecile, you're a disgrace to the school, you're a disgrace to the family." I found my mission. Having lived through 30 years of a hard, tormented life filled with pain, injustice and suffering, I had known the death of loved ones. I had known terrible diseases. I had felt millions of volts of dark pain pass through my unhappy heart. I had gone through hell. I had known the fall of the evil empire. The USSR was North Korea, only over a vast territory and with a greater number of hungry, unhappy slaves. The empire of pain had collapsed. Suddenly, I realized that I was like a character out of Orwell's novel. Everything that I believed, or rather, everything that I was forced to believe, had been a lie. What I thought was good turned out to be evil, what I thought was freedom turned out to be slavery. What I thought was true turned out to be a dirty lie, what I thought was peace turned out to be war. After going through my own earthly hell of suffering, my soul died and was reborn, breaking out of the darkness and into the light. I vowed to myself that I would do all that I could to free as many people as possible from the matrix of ignorance and anger, to find a cure for the suffering of billions of good, kind and hard-working people, to halt the destruction of nature, our only home, to help people suffering from depression and loss of purpose in life. I vowed that I would devote my life to making the world a better place. Chapter 2. New challenges facing humanity which gave birth to Super Jump. Long ago, the great philosopher and sage Confucius said, "God forbid that you live in times of change." 3,000 years ago, Confucius could not have imagined the times of accelerating change that we live in today. Today, dear reader, we are living in the Fourth Industrial Revolution. To understand what the Fourth Industrial Revolution is, let's compare it to the Second Industrial Revolution. Before the Second Industrial Revolution, 98% of the world's population worked in agriculture. After new machinery was invented, monotonous, labor-intensive agricultural work began to be performed by combines, tractors and the like. Because of this, a large number of people lost their jobs on farms, were forced to change their professions and start life anew. Before the Second Industrial Revolution, 98% of the world's population worked in agriculture, and today only 2% are engaged in agriculture. Before the Second Industrial Revolution, mankind was often hungry and many people died of malnutrition. Today, that 2% of farmers armed with advanced machinery can produce much more than they can sell. Developed countries have resorted to subsidizing their farmers to maintain food production and security. As we see, dear reader, the fates of 96% of the inhabitants of our planet fate have already passed through the meat grinder of change. They had to change their places of residence, their professions, their lives. The Fourth Industrial Revolution brings us even more radical, even more global changes. What are the drivers that are propelling the Fourth Industrial Revolution? First of all, artificial intelligence, blockchain technology, robotics, nanotechnology, genetics, developments in energy sources, and more. The most amazing thing is that the acceleration of the development of one sector accelerates the development of others. For example, nanotechnology gave the world a new material, graphene. The use of graphene in the production of computers has made computers even more powerful. Consequently, these computers are developing faster, giving birth to new materials and concepts, which in turn leads to the acceleration of the development of newer computers. Development in one technology has accelerated the development of others. This phenomenon is what the famous futurist Raymond Kurzweil described as the singularity. If you haven't already, I recommend that you listen to Mr. Kurzweil's lectures and read his books. I will not devote a great deal of time to the Fourth Industrial Revolution. A great many useful books have already been written on this subject. I simply wish to illustrate few of its facets, the factors that accelerate change, and how global they truly are. The first factor is robotics. As we know, robots can work 24 hours a day, do not go on strike, do not become ill, do not ask for salary increases, and have not yet organized trade unions. When robots were expensive, they performed only those tasks which could not be performed by man, but now the costs of robots and their usage in many areas has become less than that of human labor. For example, today in Europe, at 50% capacity, the cost of an hour's worth of robot labor is 2.7 euros. In China, more than 15,000 factories work completely without people, as robots do not need lighting. These are called dark factories. Every day, thousands of workers around the world are made redundant by robots. Last year, the production of robots in the world increased by 41%. Companies no longer need cheap, unskilled labor. Robots work more efficiently, cheaper, and faster. The second factor affecting global change is the blockchain. The blockchain is a technology of sequential chains of transactions which are protected from hacking and falsification through the help of special algorithms. How has the blockchain affected humanity? The easiest way to understand this is by comparing it with the function of the public notary. For centuries, no major transactions on earth could be consummated without a notary. People authorized by the state with their signatures and seals guaranteed the integrity of a transaction to the buyer of a house, land, and other expensive assets. Of course, there have existed dishonest notaries, liars, and scoundrels who forged documents. Today, though, blockchain technology performs a similarly notarial function, as the technology cannot be deceived or falsified. Blockchain technology is many times cheaper than any notary and more reliable. What has the introduction of this technology led to? Notaries will be out of work soon. To give an example of this, soon, the government of the United Arab Emirates plans to switch entirely to blockchain technology. This will mean the dismissal and unemployment of not only notaries, but also other civil servants whose functions will be replaced by blockchain technology and artificial intelligence. If I were a notary today, I would be looking for a new job or line of work. The next driver of the Fourth Industrial Revolution is the autopilot. With the widespread introduction of high-speed 5G communications, vehicles will communicate with each other at a speed of 0.002 minutes. This will mean the widespread introduction of autopilots. How will the autopilot affect life in America? First, a vehicle controlled by autopilot does not need a cabin. If we look at a heavy truck from the outside, it's easy to understand that the need for production facilities and machinery of the cabin makes the car more expensive by 15%. Vehicles with autopilot do not need glass, air conditioning, seats, or control panels which humans use. A truck driven by an autopilot will be cheaper and more reliable. it will be able to transport goods around the clock. Unlike live drivers, the autopilot does not need sleep, rest, or hygiene. The number of accidents on the roads will be much less. But the most important thing is the social upheaval that vehicles driven by autopilot will bring us. These changes in America alone will affect about 30 million people. Let's look at it. 8 million drivers will lose their jobs. These drivers stop somewhere to eat, sleep, cut their hair, etc. The industries that serve their lives will also disappear. Add their families, and you will get 30 million unemployed. The next factor is artificial intelligence. In the banking sector, artificial intelligence has already dismissed millions of people around the world. Artificial intelligence is already much more accurate in medical diagnoses. Artificial intelligence allows for the processing of huge databases, and today there are many areas of artificial intelligence in which the human brain is no longer competitive. For example, in the scientific community there are hundreds of thousands of articles published every year. A modern scientist cannot physically read even 1/100th of this huge flow of information, but artificial intelligence is able to cope with the task quite easily. Amazing, colossal breakthroughs are taking place in the energy sector, genetics, rocket science, medicine, the financial and economic sectors. Many naive people, vaguely aware of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, are not taking into account the snowball effect, the effect of singularity. They believe that scientific and technological progress is developing linearly. They understand that changes are occurring, but not how quickly. They believe that the old way of life, the old profession, will be enough for them for the rest of their lives. But real facts and calculations show that changes in the modern world are developing in progression. If you take a small snowball and roll it on wet, sticky snow, it will grow only slightly in size for the first meter, but in the next meter it will grow 100 times greater. So it is with the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Every day, every hour, every second, all around us there is an acceleration of change. And even if these changes have not yet affected your way of life, very soon we will all feel how the Fourth Industrial Revolution breaks and destroys our usual, understandable life. A pessimist may say, well, I can't do anything about it. I can't compete with artificial intelligence, with new robots and new technologies. And that is absolutely true. The human brain will be more and more inferior to artificial intelligence, but we should not forget that we as humans first and foremost compete with one another. Every morning when we wake up, we enter the ring of destiny and compete for the best homes, the best medical care, the best schools for our children, the best vacation spots where which to relax. And in order to get ahead in this difficult time of such competition, people need new exercises, techniques, and approaches to the development of our intelligence, just as we need the air that we breathe. Just as much as the very air that we breathe, we need the energy of super jump. There is a very good anecdote on this subject. 2 hunters crept up to a bear's den and began to fire their guns. After they had spent all of their ammunition, a huge, angry bear burst out of the cave, running in their direction. Throwing their guns aside, the hunters began to flee for their lives, knowing that bears run much faster than humans. Panting from exhaustion, the pessimist said, "It's hopeless, the bear's going to catch us, anyway." The second hunter replied, "All I'm concerned with is outrunning you." This is why it is so important to develop your own personal genius, your own intelligence and divergent thinking using new, revolutionary approaches. If you and I, dear reader, will mentally rise 350,000 kilometers upward and sit on the moon, from this perspective we can very well see the major historical, social, and scientific changes, and the scale of those changes, that humanity is experiencing today. From such a perspective it's not difficult to see that a vast number of scientific discoveries, blockchain technology, artificial intelligence, robotics, autopilot, developments in energy and genetics, have already developed at a rapid pace, and this is only the beginning. The problem is that today there is a large number of intelligent and talented people who are passionate about technology and science, applications and gadgets, but who have forgotten about or neglected to be a happy, healthy person. And here's why. There have been appallingly few discoveries in the field of adult development in the last 100 years. We can count these discoveries on one hand: psychoanalysis, Gestalt, neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, and all of these discoveries were made a long time ago. The last brilliant technique in the field of human development, NLP, was born 30 years ago. I myself was fortunate enough to speak personally with one of the creators of neuro-linguistic programming. This is why people desperately need super jump. This is why the profession of intellect trainers is developing at the pace that it is today. Before the Fourth Industrial Revolution, adults could get an education once in a lifetime and use their diplomas for the rest of their lives. Today, to survive, an adult needs to constantly learn and develop. Today, adults need super jump, just as we need the air that we breathe. We need a system for daily intellectual, emotional, and personal development and replenishment of our energies. Huge flows of information literally flatten the human mind. According to UN statistics, 76% of the world's adult population has lost their purpose, their meaning in life. This isn't hard to understand. When adults were young, they saw the way of life of their grandparents and parents. They grew up in a certain environment, with a certain speed of change, with certain values, with a certain cultural code. As they grew up, they continued to live almost the same life that their parents lived. Today, however, any thinking adult understands that he or she is in a spin cycle of changes, and does not know what will happen to one's profession, business, even knowledge, in just 5 years' time. Remember again the words of Confucius: God forbid that you live in times of change. And today we live in times of accelerating change. The overload on the human psyche and health is enormous. Billions of adults today have lost their support systems, lost their meaning in life, live with a lack of energy. The old methods of helping adults such as psychoanalysis, Gestalt, NLP and others are no longer effective, no longer adequate to cope with the increased overload on the human psyche. This is what the data tells us, or rather, screams to us. The number of people suffering from depression, subdepression, neuroses, psychoses, apathy, and loss of purpose of life in developed countries is constantly growing. We can conclude, dear reader, that if the old approaches and methods of helping adults were working, the number of people suffering from mental illnesses would at least remain at about the same level. But the use of antidepressants is increasing with great speed. The number of unfortunate, lost people is also growing with tremendous speed. We can conclude that adults desperately need the new method of personal development known as Super Jump, with its intellect trainers and powerful adult education. It's very easy to explain. When machines took the place of human physical activity in the workplace, adults began to need fitness clubs and fitness trainers. Today, billions of adults are chronically energy deficient. A modern adult needs external help in the field of personality development, energy and intelligence development. The modern adult needs external girding, the external support of expert intellect trainers. Simple calculations show that there is a deficit of 100 million intellect trainers on Earth today. More on this later. Modern man is like a mobile phone. While it is charged, it is a very useful device, without which we cannot imagine our life today, but if the battery is not recharged, the phone becomes a useless piece of glass, plastic and metal, worthless even for pounding nails. To make our mobile phones useful, we charge them every day. The same principle works with billions of people. Billions of intelligent, hardworking and good people have lost their energy and become incompetitive, wake up in the morning tired, overwhelmed, and exhausted, chronically short of energy. The old chargers are useless, they don't work. It's impossible to charge your mobile phone with a windmill. People need Super Jump. Super Jump is a charger for every day. It's a new, endless source of positive energy for success. What is Super Jump? It is 8 intellectual, energetic and emotional exercises connected in one system. Imagine a solid, sturdy spiral staircase. Each step is one of the Super Jump exercises. Every day, you slowly climb these solid, reliable, and proven steps to realize your new energy, new life, new achievements. It's very interesting to trace how our 8 intellectual pearls were born. Long ago, we set before ourselves the task of choosing the most effective exercises that humanity has created in the past 6,000 years. Why 6,000 years? It's a historical fact that the first deciphered letters known to man were written 6,000 years ago by the Sumerians. The Sumerians made their inscriptions on clay tablets with sharp sticks. Scientists have deciphered their language, and today we know for a fact that the first works in the field of human development were created 6,000 years ago. One of the Sumerians' writings reads, "If one does not have a dream, he is dead." Dear reader, 6,000 years have passed. Has anything relating to people and their dreams changed? Nothing at all. In today's world, we often see people who are still young and strong, but they have no dreams, they do not aspire to anything, they are controlled by apathy. Physically, they are certainly living, strong people, but in their personal development they are dead, with nothing to strive for. As my friend, Pyotr Silkin, says of such a person who lives on the principle of Groundhog Day, This man died a long time ago, but was simply forgotten to be buried. To create the most effective system of personality development, Super Jump, we have studied everything that humanity has created over the past 6,000 years in the fields of intelligence, divergent thinking, genius, positive mentality, and charisma. And to our surprise, the number of exercises and techniques is small, numbering only a few hundred. I certainly do not take into account inefficient, foolish, or destructive methods of human development, but if you take the ones that are truly effective and creative, they are, unfortunately, very few. I've spent and devoted the last 34 years of my life to the research and development of exercises, teaching methods and techniques in the field of adult development. It's amazing, but in the field of development of children and youths, the greatest giants among scientists and teachers have created much that is useful and effective. For example, Pestalozzi created labor pedagogy, Montessori, learning through the game room, Makarenko, relapse-free pedagogy, Shalva Aminashvili, humane pedagogy. We can list dozens of great teachers and scientists who devoted their genius and their talents to the development of children and adolescents. Until the creation of Super Jump, no such educational programs for adults existed. Today, we, the Intellect trainers, are paving new ways of thinking for all mankind. Today, we, the creators of Super Jump, are devoting our lives to develop the world's first adult pedagogy, because adults need Super Jump, once again, like the air that we breathe. Once again, dear reader, the best minds of our time, the most talented people of today are passionate about the development of robots, blockchain technology, artificial intelligence, the most fantastic gadgets and devices, but all of us, all of humanity, have forgotten the most important thing: a happy, fulfilled person. At the very center of our educational universe is humanity itself. There is nothing on earth more important than a happy, healthy, developing individual. As the great Socrates said, it is the sacred duty of every man to develop himself and his loved ones. Modern humanity faces large and complex new challenges which are impossible to solve and overcome through old methods and old professions. That is why the universe and fate have given humanity a new profession, the Intellect trainer, the world's first adult pedagogue, and the mighty power plant so vital in today's world, Super Jump. Chapter 3. Wake up! Your house is on fire. Not long ago, in many different countries around the world, students held mass demonstrations, calling on adults, their parents and grandparents' generations, to stop the destruction of nature. On the posters, which the children carried, were written slogans such as, "Where will we live?" "Adults, don't kill us." "Stop the madness." The children were wiser than their parents. Ordinary students were wiser than ministers, presidents, entrepreneurs, heads of corporations. In order to understand how close humanity has come to self-destruction, to disaster, let's put emotions aside and spend a few minutes looking at the facts. 1. Over the past 100 years, the number of people on Earth has increased by 750%, from 1 billion to 7.5 billion, and the amount of energy consumption per person during this time has increased 1,000 times. Multiply the increase in the number of people by the increase in the use of energy and realize that the impact on the ecosystem is 75,000% greater than it was 100 years ago. We, the adults, like madmen, are burning away the fragile balances of nature as with a fiery hurricane. 2. Over the past 50 years, 70% of the Earth's supply of fish and seafood has disappeared. 40% of ocean life that is not consumed by humans has also been destroyed. We have already destroyed 90% of insects, and they are at the bottom of the food chain. This means that the ecological catastrophe is already becoming irreversible. In just 50 years, 30% of the ozone layer has been destroyed. The ozone layer and the magnetic field protect us from brutal, deadly cosmic radiation. People are worried about the huge amount of plastic clogging the world's oceans, but problems with the oceans are much worse than plastic. The oceans are the main lungs of the planet, or rather the microorganisms which live in them are. 50 years ago, the oceans already contained dead zones which were devoid of oxygen, in which no life existed. The average size of these zones was between 1 to 2 square miles, and today they have grown to 250,000 square miles. These dead zones continue to grow thanks to the stupidity, the insanity of adults. We're fools, killing the lungs of the planet. What will our children and grandchildren breathe tomorrow? The University of Chicago has a symbolic doomsday clock. A group of Nobel laureates, taking into account a wide variety of factors, estimates how many conditional minutes are left until the end of the world. For example, at the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Council of Sages at this university turned the clock to 5 minutes to 12, signifying that there were 5 minutes left until the end of the world. Today, this Council of Nobel laureates has brought the arrow of judgment closer by another 3 minutes, symbolizing that humanity has 2 minutes left. This is understood by schoolchildren, but not by parents who are willing to give their lives for their children. But because of their ignorance and their madness, they themselves kill not only their children and grandchildren, but the entire human race. For what purpose are we destroying nature? Let's ask ourselves some honest questions. Why are we destroying the futures of our children and grandchildren? What is the point? What is the reason for such dangerous folly? And when did humanity pull the trigger of the gun aimed directly at its collective head? It all began with the evolution of commercial advertising. The goal of any advertising campaign is to entice people to buy as many goods as possible. And to make people buy, the main tactic of advertising is to humiliate those people who do not have a new car, new clothes, or a fashionable phone. The purpose of any advertising is to injure consumers psychologically, to instill in them a sense of inferiority, thereby inspiring them to work as much as possible, take out loans and buy. Today, more than $500 billion are spent on advertising worldwide every year. Only $24.5 billion is needed to provide all of the children in the world with a primary school education. According to the UN, only $50 billion would be needed to defeat hunger on Earth once and for all. But most politicians, athletes, and businessmen have little interest in starving children. Blinded by madness, for the sake of their greed, they are ready 100 times a day to kill our planet. 2,300 years ago, Alexander the Great conquered all the riches of the world, and before he died, he gave an order that he should be buried so that all could see his empty hands. Thus, he showed the whole world, "I go naked, I take no wealth with me as I go to the light." Modern rich people and leading opinion shapers do not understand the simple truth: you do not need to eat 100 times a day, 100 cars to drive, and 100 clothing outfits to wear at once. Their greed and foolishness knows no bounds. There are more than 3,000 billionaires, US dollars, in the world. Each week they will be richer by $11 billion. Every week in the world there becomes 5 more billionaires. The desire to climb another rung on the ladder in Forbes magazine makes these fools destroy our only home, the futures of their children and grandchildren. In the behavior, actions, and motivation of modern elites we see one thing: madness. The blind lead the blind to the abyss. Some of them, realizing that there will soon be an environmental disaster, build underground bunkers, invest billions of dollars in the construction of missiles and hope to try to fly to Mars. But if they paid attention to just a few facts regarding a long stay in space, I am sure they would redirect these billions toward the rescue of our Earth. What would be the point of spending billions of dollars, along with the time and energies of talented people, so that a few hundred people could live in a prison in cold, empty space? The fact is that we don't appreciate what we already have. Imagine if a Martian were to land on Earth. Imagine his enthusiastic eyes looking upon our most beautiful, rich planet. In contrast to cold, bleak, gloomy Mars, he would see blue oceans, snow-white clouds floating in the sky, the divine beauty of plants, flowers, birds and butterflies, the indescribable beauty of snow-capped mountains, deep blue lakes and rivers. The Martian in the literal sense would see heaven on Earth. It is unbearably stupid to dream of flying to Mars, spending billions of dollars along with the efforts of the best engineers and specialists toward it, and at the same time to indifferently cut down our existing tree of life. I admire Elon Musk as a brilliant engineer, an entrepreneur and a good, noble man. But in his appeals to bolt to Mars, he distracts people's attention from the fact that right now we urgently need to save our own home. I admire what he's doing. He has some very brilliant people around him, but their efforts are misdirected. What would you think of a knight who tries to slay the villain by striking at its shadow? We need to fight the causes of the villainy, not the consequences. The enemy of humanity is singular: ignorance. The shadows, or the consequences of this ignorance, are things such as war, the destruction of nature, depression and drug addiction. It's not difficult to conclude that if the source of all the ills of mankind is ignorance, the cause of ignorance is an imperfect system of adult development. This is why we, the intellect trainers, have created the first adult pedagogy. By liberating billions of people from ignorance, we will drive this damnable ignorance from the face of the earth with the light of knowledge. Remember the tale of the sleeping kingdom? It's a fairy tale about all of us. We are in a dream, like zombies in orderly rows striding toward the abyss. The way to break the hold that this madness has on our world, and as quickly as possible, is to convey super jump from person to person, heart to heart. I have written many articles and books during the course of my life, trying to wake up the sleeping kingdom with words. I freely admit that I'm a middling writer, but as an intellect trainer, I know from experience that without a doubt, no films, articles, or lectures will be able to drive ignorance from our world. Only regular intellectual training, exercises, actions, and teamwork can stop this mass madness. Judge for yourself, dear reader. Every minute in the world, 3.5 books are published. There have already been thousands upon thousands of truly excellent books written on a variety of topics, a vast number of wonderful and talented documentaries filmed. And what is the result? Every day we accelerate toward the approach of disaster. Every day we kill more and more, and burn out our fragile ecosystem. And for what? Let's engage our imagination and mentally fast forward 15 to 20 years. We see a terrible wasteland, billions of rotting, stinking corpses, and we're choking for breath. Only yesterday, where there were green, living, breathing forests are now only charred, black stumps. Beautiful rivers have turned into poisoned, rusty, smelly swamps. Seeing this future, businessmen, heads of corporations, top sports and entertainment stars would beg God to turn back the hands of time and rehabilitate this terrifying new reality. Seeing the disfigured corpses of his children and loved ones rotting on a scorched earth, such a luminary returning from the future would say to himself and his family, "I've made a lot of money, but I only need a small part of it for a comfortable life. I would, urgently, today give all my billions of dollars to save our only beautiful home. I myself will plant trees every evening to save myself, my children and grandchildren from a terrible death." Let me relate a personal experience to you. When Pyotr Silkin and I together created a direct sales cosmetic company, Edelstar, our team had more than 130,000 independent distributors. At the time, we believed, quite naively, that if we planted many thousands of trees every year, we would provide an example for all of humanity to halt the destruction of nature. Poor, well-meaning fools we were. At the very second we were planting a single tree, thousands were being cut down. And the problem is not only that of trees, but of nature as a collective living organism. Today, the ocean is dying, insects, frogs and birds are dying, the main owners of our planet, bacteria and microbes are dying, and unfortunately, it's impossible to solve this problem by planting trees. Imagine a person dying in an intensive care unit, having major problems with his heart, lungs and central nervous system. And at the time that the person's vitality needs saving, the most talented microsurgeon in the world is stitching up his finger. No doubt, saving a finger is very important, but a finger is of no value to a corpse. It's necessary to save the functions that sustain life. At the time, I didn't understand that the main problem was in people's minds, in their ways of thinking, and that everything else was simply a consequence of our own basic ignorance. As my grandmother used to say, if God wants to punish a man, he deprives him of his mind. My dear reader, let's try to understand, together, the main reason for the self-destruction of our home, our nature, our fragile ecosystem. The reason for humanity's self-destruction. 2,500 years ago there lived a great philosopher, Socrates, who throughout his life pondered upon the important questions. Why do people kill each other? Why do they fight with fire and sword, destroy entire cities, entire countries? After all, it is much wiser not to kill and destroy, but to build and create. What was the reason? And the great Socrates left us a recipe for saving our world. It is this: the world has only one evil, ignorance, and there is only one good, knowledge. Socrates also said, the sacred duty of every adult is to develop and improve himself and his loved ones throughout his entire life. It's obvious that the main problem facing humanity today is ignorance, but what causes ignorance? Obviously, it's the obsolete system of education and human development. The solution is the new adult pedagogy, Super Jump. Obviously, if the old methods of education have proven themselves harmful and lead humanity to disaster, we need a fundamentally new pedagogical approach to the problem of adult development. Humanity desperately needs, like the air that we breathe, a new elite team of professionals, intellect trainers. Nobel laureates, outstanding scientists, as well as schoolchildren may sound the alarm, but unfortunately, few hear them. Recently, a group of leading scientists published a 700-page report, the conclusion of which is that in just 15 years, humanity will finally destroy the fragile ecosystem, and we will all die. The super rich are already building bunkers and funding the construction of space shuttles in the hope of escaping the consequences of their actions. You can draw your own conclusions, but as I see it, humanity has no other way to survive. The choice is simple. Either we captivate the entire adult population of the world with the idea of constant intellectual, emotional, and energetic development, and through intellectual training break the spell and free people from centuries-old sleep, or we will destroy nature and ourselves in just 15 years. Even if a few thousand people were to escape to Mars, this would hardly solve the problem of the survival of the human race. If we continue to sell deadly fallacies about the meaning of life, through endless advertising, inspiring billions of ordinary people to accumulate as much money and buy as many consumer goods as possible, we all, 7.5 billion people, will come to a terrible end. Super Jump, a safety net for humanity. Leading opinion shapers, successful businessmen, politicians, sports and entertainment stars, listen to the students, listen to the children. Don't you see, don't you understand, that our civilization is like a sinking Titanic? The decks of the sinking ship are occupied by countries, constantly fighting among themselves to capture as much space as possible. The cabins on the ship are occupied by people, competing with each other, fighting for the largest and most luxurious cabins. Some naively believe that it's necessary to improve the world from their own cabin. They explain to their neighbors, if we all make our cabins tidy and cozy, we will save the world. But the problem is much bigger, much deeper. Except for a handful of students and scientists, all of the passengers on our Titanic are busy fighting over power and money, and the most basic, obvious realization occurs to few else. That in 15 years we, representatives of all different religions and nation-states, will all drown, everything will die, and that the cause of our planetary tragedy is ignorance. And that the cure is in the true knowledge transferred through a pedagogical chain, in the form of the Super Jump system. There is a way to give a future to our children and grandchildren. Every thinking adult on Earth needs to stop the insane consumption and accumulation, needs to stop buying, start developing. Of course, it's presumptive of me to say that Super Jump is the only method that can change the world. But I have tried many different systems of development, exercises, techniques and efficiencies, and have come to the conclusion that Super Jump is superior to everything that was created before it. If you, dear reader, know another way to develop adults, to develop yourself, to develop other people, please do everything that you can to advance it. The main thing is, to wake up as many people as possible, who are competing and fighting in vain on our sinking Titanic. Chapter 4. The Developing Super Jump System and How It Works. The Super Jump is a unique program which consists of 8 intellect exercises, a team concept conducive to personal development, and an intellect trainer. Dear reader, let's comprehensively analyze the elements of the Super Jump system, each of which is integral in developing intellect, energy and a positive mentality. 8 intellect exercises. As a result of 34 years of practical research and analysis of hundreds of worthy exercises collected from around the world, I have selected the 8 which I believe to be the most effective. Each exercise develops one or more qualities and facets of one's personality. Each of these exercises has enormous power on its own strength, but the real quantum leap in personal development is realized through the synergy of all 8 exercises used as part of a larger system. We perform the Super Jump exercises as in an unbroken circle, throughout our lives. Super Jump is a pattern of personal development for a lifetime. The Intellect Trainer. The Intellect Trainer is the primary core of the developing Super Jump system. To better understand the role of the Intellect Trainer, imagine a civil aviation pilot training school without instructors. Imagine how training for future pilots would be conducted. They would go to training courses, be given books, shown videos, and after a year be expected to successfully fly passenger aircraft. I think we would all agree, dear reader, that we would not want to fly in an airplane which was being controlled by a person who had only read the instructions for flying it. Similarly, the Super Jump airliner is just as difficult to manage without an intellect trainer. Here's another example. If we were to remove fitness trainers from all gyms, beginners coming to the gyms would not only not know how to use the equipment to its maximum effectiveness, but even in a safe manner. It's impossible to imagine athletes, football players, baseball players, etc., without coaches. In the same way, Super Jump does not work without an intellect trainer. An environment for development. Pedagogy around the world has long and repeatedly proved the importance of an environment conducive to development. A person develops intellectually, energetically, and emotionally 10 times faster if he is surrounded by people who are also striving for the same such development and growth. To better understand the power of the collective, watch the film, The Ron Clark Story. This beautiful film will give you a strong charge of good, positive energy. How we carry out our 8 intellect exercises. Having studied and learned all 8 intellect exercises, we perform one of these exercises during the course of a given day. That is, we focus on only one of the exercises per day. The reason for this is that our brain is wired in a way that we can't possibly focus on 8 exercises simultaneously. You can't watch 8 videos on YouTube at once. At the same time, if you do only one of the exercises repetitively, after a few days our brain will not notice it. We will plateau. Let me give you an example. During the day your eyes get used to the sunlight and you do not notice it, but when the sun rises after a dark night, the same daylight that you did not notice during the day yesterday makes a huge impression on you. Using this same principle, every 8 days, we perform the intellect exercises in sequence, and each time throughout the circle of exercises we discover new knowledge, new mental height, new energy through the individual exercises. We rise as if we were ascending a sturdy, reliable spiral staircase. One day, one exercise, one step of growth. And in this fashion we continue to develop and grow throughout our long, contented life, filled with love, prosperity, and good fortune. Why not? Prohibited in the Super Jump classroom. The super goal, or the mission statement of Super Jump can be expressed concisely: to stop the destruction of nature, to stop the self-destruction of humanity, through intellect training. To do this, we must unite all forward-thinking people on Earth. For this reason, we prohibit the following topics from discussion. 1. During intellect training, we never discuss politics. Your political views are your own business, and we respect that. 2. During intellect training, we don't discuss religion. During the course of our training sessions, we don't even come close to this topic. We respect your faith, and what you believe is also your own business. Please, don't evangelize during Super Jump classes. 3. It's forbidden to convey negative information during Super Jump classes. If you have a story that would darken the mood, please keep it to yourself, as we are gathered here to help each other to grow and develop. Super Jump knowledge is transferred through a pedagogical chain. In science, knowledge is purely informational. For example, if I were to write out the famous Einstein formula, E=mc², I would have conveyed that particular scientific knowledge. It's quite another thing to transfer knowledge in the field of adult personal development. In the field of adult pedagogy, it isn't possible to transfer knowledge through dry information alone. Let me give you an interesting historical example that will help us shed light on the mystery of knowledge in the field of human development. This story happened 330 years before the birth of Christ. Alexander the Great had conquered India, and there he learned that his teacher, Aristotle, had written a book. The great commander was angry with his teacher and wrote him a threatening letter. "Aristotle, you are wrong. You have no right to open knowledge to ordinary people. I do not want to rule only with the sword and fear, I want to rule people with the help of knowledge." To which Aristotle replied, "Alexander, do not worry, I only revealed the information." The acquisition of true knowledge is a special event that occurs at the time of communication between the student and the teacher. In Super Jump, the pedagogical chain is of great importance. The pedagogical chain is the wiring through which energy, power, and secrets of mastery are transmitted. This approach has been given to us by the East. Let me give you another personal example. One time, fate brought me together with the owner of the oldest tea house in China. Our company, Edelstar, sold, among other products, the pressed Chinese tea, pu'er. These tea leaves can be stored for up to 100 years, and every year their value increases. At the time, I had recently sold 200 grams of this tea in China for $250,000. The quality of the tea was excellent, and the price was affordable for a large number of consumers. We decided to organize a celebration marking the 5th anniversary of our company and invited all of our suppliers. One of them was the owner of the tea house, Mr. Li Kai. A few days before the meeting, I was told that he was a very respected businessman, had 3 beautiful children, had served as a colonel in the Chinese army, and had been an instructor in a special forces unit organized to combat drug trafficking. I also had respected the fact that the tea house which he operated had been in his family for 450 years. I was surprised incredibly as I heard his first words when we finally met. With extreme pride and dignity, my guest introduced himself as a Shaolin monk of the 28th generation. These words made a strong impression on me. Instantly, I saw in my imagination a teaching chain of 1,600 years. I saw how masters carefully passed the secret knowledge of martial arts from one generation to the next. My guest's words were filled with respect and love for this long line of teachers and mentors. This pedagogical approach is not well known in America and Europe, but it has a huge advantage over classical education, where the student paying for education loses touch with his or her teachers upon completion, and the teachers in turn forget about the thousands of students who paid for their time and knowledge. In America, education and development is a huge, multi-billion-dollar business with its own rules and laws. We at Super Jump adhere to an Oriental approach in the transfer of knowledge, energy, and the secrets of their mastery. Super Jump is more like an intellectual, energetic Shaolin than a classical university-type transfer of knowledge. In Super Jump, the teacher-student relationships are carefully preserved throughout our lives. Our pedagogical relations are imbued with mutual respect, love, and gratitude. We are building a team of intellect trainers and a system of intellect training intended to last for thousands of years. That evening several years ago, my dear friend Mr. Li Kai and I talked until morning. As a gift, he presented me with leaves from a tea tree which were already 600 years old. It was the best tea I've ever had. And now, dear reader, I am most pleased to introduce each of the 8 intellectual pearls to you, to tell you how to fulfill them, and what they will give to you. I've devoted an individual chapter to each intellect exercise. Chapter 5. Intellect Exercise, Be Healthy. The foundation of the Super Jump system is 8 ultra-effective exercises. I created these 8 exercises over a period of 34 years. During this time, I traveled throughout much of the world: Tibet, Japan, China, America, Europe, Latin America, Asia. I spent more than $1.5 million on my training in searching for the most effective exercises. The first exercise, Be Healthy, helped me to fight off a terrible disease. It was suffering, physical and moral pain that led me to create an exercise that saved me and has already helped thousands upon thousands of good, kind people. The name I've given this exercise, Be Healthy, is an homage to my ethnic background. In the Russian language and way of understanding, these words, Budta Zdorovi, are a conveyance of warmth and genuine goodwill, and not the cold admonition that they might tend to translate to in English, word for word. The story of the birth, the creation of the first exercise began with the most terrible tragedy in my life. When I was 17 years old, my beloved, brilliant, only brother Valentin died in an auto accident. He was just 23 years old, and at the time was the best student at the Togliatti Polytechnic Institute. He already had many patents and inventions. He was the leader of any group that he was associated with, and all of his teachers were very fond of him. On that terrible, dark day, he, as usual, had gone to the institute by bus. A drunk truck driver crashed into the bus and my brother was gone. There were 2 brothers in my family, and I was the inferior one, the loser, the slob, the family disgrace. My older brother had shone above us all. He was hardworking, just, honest, brilliant. Nature seemed to have given him the best and me the worst. The moment I heard about the terrible tragedy, I felt as though half of me had died, my better half. Half of my heart, my soul, my mind. I grieved for my better half, the half of me which held all light. In just one night, my blood pressure doubled. I recall that before the tragedy, my blood pressure was 120/80ths. When I woke up that night suffering from a terrible headache, my mother called an ambulance, and the doctors measured my blood pressure. It was already 240/120ths. I lived with blood pressure in this range for more than 2 years, and in that time I experienced headaches so terrible that they cannot be described in words. It felt like I was living in some sort of medieval torture chamber, as if someone had sewed a hat made of wet leather and put it on my head to dry, slowly, the pressure squeezing incredibly and crushing my skull every day and night. Every day I took more than 60 pills, and there were periods in which I was given injections every 3 hours, but nothing helped. If somewhere on earth there is a hell of physical and moral pain, then I have lived more than 2 years at the bottom of this hell. After 2 years of unsuccessful treatments and endless suffering, the doctor who treated told me honestly, "Boy, I don't know how to help you. I'm sorry, but I tried everything that I could." And it was true. What could I do? What could I do? I began to study alternative medicine. I read books, communicated with different healers, trying to find a cure for my suffering. I gradually tried one exercise, then another, then another. I tried dozens of techniques, practices and exercises, and one of them worked. A true miracle happened, when in just 2 weeks I was transformed from an unhappy, dying invalid into a person who was absolutely healthy, energetic and happy. And all thanks to one simple exercise, be healthy. Its simplicity and genius are as two sisters, holding hands. Brilliant, efficient, and always easy. This exercise not only returned me to good health, but also gave me happiness and real joy. It gave me a new life. What exactly is this exercise, be healthy? And what does it give a person? 1. It strengthens the immune system. Regular, daily implementation leads a person to forget about the common cold, general malaise, and the flu. 2. Doing the exercise charges us with the positive energy of success for the entire day. 3. By doing the exercise, be healthy, we cleanse our consciousness and soul from the informational and emotional sludge that has accumulated over the previous day. 4. The scale of our very personalities will grow in a surprising way. In a short time we become real giants, which gives us a major competitive advantage and allows us to tap into our huge natural potential. 5. After a few months of regular exercise, people tend to connect to a sort of universal Wi-Fi and download from there new revolutionary, progressive ideas for solving problems and a huge amount of new information. An example of such a connection is the renowned Nikola Tesla, who created more than 1,000 revolutionary inventions. Nikola Tesla himself said, "All these ideas are not mine, I obtained them from some center in the universe." Nikola Tesla wanted to teach people to download these sorts of brilliant ideas, too, but did not have time. But the exercise, be healthy, is the most reliable password to the universal Wi-Fi. Personally, after only 2 weeks I was transformed from an effectively disabled person into a most healthy, cheerful, happy person. I have been doing the exercise, be healthy, every day for 34 years. How to perform the exercise, be healthy. Be healthy can be performed in the morning, at lunchtime, or in the evening. If you feel stressed or overloaded emotionally, you can perform the exercise 3 to 4 times throughout the course of the day. It all depends on your desire and your situation. Before I describe the exercise itself, I want to call your attention to this very important fact. The cold water used in the exercise gives us 5% of the energy we receive. The other 95% of the strength and energy of the exercise, be healthy, comes to us through wishing health and happiness to all people on earth. The following are step-by-step instructions on how to perform the exercise. 1. Start running cold water in a shower or fill a basin with cold water. 2. Before you step into the cold shower or drench yourself with the cold water, repeat to yourself several times, to yourself or aloud, from the bottom of your heart, from the soul, that you wish all people health and happiness. Simply express most sincerely, I wish all people health and happiness. Repeat this wish several times. The more sincerely you wish all people on earth health and happiness, the more health and happiness will come to you. Then pour the cold water over yourself, or step into the cold shower, continuing to wish all people health and happiness. If you're doing the exercise in a cold shower, count to 5, close your eyes, and with even greater sincerity and passion, repeat again, I wish all people health and happiness, several times. At the moment of making the wish, you can turn on your imagination and conceptualize that your metaphysical body has become so large that the earth fits in your palms. Imagine how carefully you warm the earth with your palms and fill it with your love, with all the kindness of your heart emanating out to all 7.5 billion people in the world. When doing this exercise, it's important to understand that we live in 2 worlds, the physical world and the metaphysical world. In the physical world there are our bodies, and things which can be measured in liters, kilograms, meters, etc. In the physical world, the objective world, there are objects that we can quantify, but our thoughts, soul, feelings, ideas and emotions live in another world, the metaphysical world. And unlike the physical world, the metaphysical world is infinite. The laws of the physical and metaphysical worlds work opposite from one another. For example, if you have 2 bottles of mineral water in the physical world and you give one to a friend, you will then have just 1 bottle. If you give the other bottle to another friend, you will not have a single bottle of water remaining. In the physical world, the more we give, the less we have left to ourselves. In the metaphysical world, everything works on the contrary. The more you wish people health and happiness, the more you give people warmth, love and kindness, the more health and happiness will be in your own soul, in your superconsciousness. People are shallow. People are not conscious that they are often wrong. They may think that the more they wish health, happiness, kindness and love to others, the less love and happiness they will have remaining to themselves. The truth of life, though, is that it works the other way around. The more, and the more sincerely, that you wish all people health and happiness, the more energy of success and energy of health you will receive at the same time. As intellect trainers, we never treat illnesses. If our students, God forbid, are ill, we advise them to visit medical professionals. It is very important to use all the achievements of modern medicine. We, the intellect trainers, do not treat people, we teach them not to become ill. We believe that it is much wiser and more appropriate to teach a person to be healthy, cheerful and energetic, and Super Jump is an invaluable help in this. Super Jump is the most powerful, the strongest charger for the inner person. Super Jump is an endless source of positive, effervescent energy. Personally, I have a lot of respect for modern science and medicine. I take this opportunity in this book to express my infinite love and respect, my infinite gratitude to all doctors, scientists, pharmacists, nurses, all of the people who work to care for our health. We must remember that not so long ago, just 150 years ago, life expectancy was 35 years. People died from pneumonia, from stepping on a rusty nail, from the simple yet dreaded diseases that we do not even pay attention to today. Only thanks to the development of science, the development of medicine, life expectancy has now increased to the highest rate in history. Please do not listen to ignorant people who are trying to find health in ancient books. I would advise these ignorant, unconscious healers to go to Rome, visit the ancient Roman cemetery and calculate the average life expectancy of 2,000 years ago. You'd be surprised, but it was only 25 years. Therefore, do not look in the ancient books for longevity and magic recipes. I want to remind you that a significant jump in life expectancy occurred after Louis Pasteur, the father of modern microbiology, invented vaccines and understood the causes of mass outbreaks of cholera, pestilence, anthrax and the like. Let's turn on our imagination and mentally transport ourselves to a hospital of 150 years ago. What would we see? Filth, unsanitary conditions, every fifth woman who gave birth to a child dying, every third child being born dead or dying shortly after birth. Operations performed without anesthesia, wound dressed with dirty bandages, a doctor who has just performed an operation immediately moving on to the next patient without washing his hands, transferring an infection from one patient to another. Only 150 years ago, people died like flies, the average life expectancy was 35 years. Only thanks to scientists and doctors, only thanks to the development of science and medicine have we begun to live longer and longer. Therefore, the exercise, be healthy, both develops the energy within us and strengthens our immune system. But if, God forbid, you are ill, then immediately, without delay, seek out a medical professional. When I'm under a lot of stress and need more positive energy to push forward, I'm happy to do the be healthy exercise 2 or 3 times a day. You don't need to drink 10 cups of coffee, just go to the shower, turn on the cold water, sincerely wish all people health and happiness several times, step into the cold water, once again to wish all people health and happiness. You will connect to the energy of the universe and be able to continue to work with a smile on your face for hours. The effectiveness of the be healthy exercise is proven by another incident that occurred during my life. My friend, Vladimir Tolstoyuzov, an outstanding scientist in the field of nutrition, had returned from a wonderful resort in Germany and told me about a new miracle medical procedure. It's called a cryosauna. He told me how that in the 2 weeks that he was there, his body was literally saturated with energy, increased potency, and he even felt slightly younger. The professional authority of my friend was so great that I just had to buy one of these cryosaunas for myself. At that time, I believed that it was a powerful source of energy and health. The cryosauna device itself is quite simple. It is basically a shower with warm walls. The way it worked was that one went into this capsule, the door was closed and liquid nitrogen was pumped in, mixing with the air. Gradually, the temperature dropped to -160 degrees Celsius. In those conditions, the human body experiences a temperature shock, the immune system is stimulated, the human body is stressed by the extreme cold and thereby receives a powerful charge of energy. To maintain the cryosauna at my home was expensive, requiring a lot of time, effort and money. But, I thought to myself, okay, if this device really is a sort of miracle charger, what could be more valuable than one's own health and energy? Having tested the technology of the cryosauna on myself and loved ones for 2 weeks, I made an amazing discovery. It turned out that a cold shower or dousing oneself with a bucket of cold water provides an even greater stimulating effect. This is why, in the cryosauna capsule, the temperature really drops to -160 degrees Celsius for a short time, but the heat capacity of the gas is 75 times less than the heat capacity of the body. If we compare the heat capacity of gas and water, the heat capacity of water is more than 100 times greater, and since our body is 85% water, the natural impact of liquid nitrogen mixed with air is not as effective as the impact of cold water. I am glad that I had the 2-week experiment with the cryosauna, after which I can safely say that cold water is more effective than cold gas. Don't waste your time and money. The exercise, Be Healthy, provides a much greater effect. I want to draw your attention once again, dear reader, to the fact that the real strength of Be Healthy is not in the cold water. If for some reason you cannot take a cold shower or douse yourself with water, you can even simply wash your hands and face with cold water. Again, 95% of the strength of the exercise, Be Healthy, comes from the act of sincerely wishing all people health and happiness. In the main religions of the world there is a golden rule, to treat people the way that you want people to treat you. When we sincerely, wholeheartedly wish all people on earth health and happiness, we receive a huge flow of energy. You will experience a feeling as if the universe from all sides fills your body and soul with good, positive energy of success, joy and happiness. It's truly an amazing effect. The more and the more sincerely we wish health to all people on earth, the more energy we get. If you simply mechanically pronounce the words, I wish all people health and happiness, the exercise will provide no charging, health-improving effects. My goal, dear reader, is to convince you, at least for a couple of weeks, to do the exercise, Be Healthy, every day. Therefore, I'll once again list the positive effects of this exercise. 1. The immune system is strengthened so much that you forget about colds, respiratory problems, influenza and many other diseases. I think you'd agree that it's much wiser not to fight the diseases, but to condition your immune system to such a level that the diseases will bypass you. People fear contracting cancer or other terrible diseases, but common colds and the flu take years off our lives. The U.S. economy loses $45 billion every year due to these types of maladies. 2. The exercise, Be Healthy, is the strongest positive energy charger for success throughout the entire day. 3. When we sincerely, from the bottom of our hearts, wish all people health and happiness, we create a new, large-scale, truly great personality for ourselves. Only a big, large-scale person can sincerely wish, from the bottom of his or her heart, health and happiness to all people. 4. By performing the exercise, Be Healthy, we clean our nervous system and consciousness from emotional dirt and poison that has accumulated within us. You've probably seen a dish detergent commercial where a dirty pan instantly, as if in a fairy tale, becomes absolutely clean from grease and grime. The same thing happens to our consciousness when we do the Be Healthy exercise. We clean it from the sludge of negative information and energy and emotional debris. When I studied meditation in one of the Shinto temples in Japan, I showed this exercise to one of my teachers. The master was 102 years old, and he began to practice the Be Healthy exercise with me. After a few days he said to me with surprise, when I go to the toilet, I cleanse the body, when I wash in the shower I clean the skin, when I do the exercise, Be Healthy, I cleanse the soul. 5. After doing the Be Healthy exercise over a period of several months, you will learn to connect to that universal Wi-Fi and download, as it were, the most amazing ideas and solutions from a variety of sources. Solutions and innovations in science, design, art, motivation, pedagogy, logistics, manufacturing, security, finance. You will personally obtain a distinct competitive advantage. I remember well my delight and surprise after many years of illness, torment and suffering. In just 2 weeks, I became a completely healthy, happy, energetic person, and I sincerely wish for you to become the same. Chapter 6. Intellect Exercise, 200 Smiles. I very well remember the beginning of the search for the second intellectual pearl I have chosen, 200 Smiles. It was in San Francisco, at lunchtime, and I was sitting by a huge window overlooking the ocean, reading a book by one of my favorite historical figures, Martin Luther King. At one point, I was struck to the depths of the soul by the tirelessness of this man, his passion, his dedication. In just 1 year, Martin Luther King delivered his famous "I Have a Dream" speech 273 times. In the year he was imprisoned, in the year that he was assassinated, the same forces prevented him from speaking and preaching his message. When I read about his capacity for work and his passion, I felt ashamed. Looking at my own life, which had been devoted mainly to business and entrepreneurship, I was terribly ashamed of the fact that I was well-fed and well-dressed, but I had not given anything back to the people of the world. At that moment, my whole life seemed empty and meaningless. For some reason then I remembered Einstein's words, "Life for itself has no meaning." My heart was pierced by a sharp pain for my own meaningless, empty life. I suddenly realized that I was living the life of the main character in the movie, Groundhog Day. I woke up in the morning, went to the toilet, washed, ate breakfast, went to work, ate lunch, worked some more yet again, attended to my family doings in the evening. Every day seemed to me to be a circle of a gray, meaningless existence. At that time, I thought I had a lot of experience. By that time I had accumulated a lot of knowledge, traveled to Tibet, Japan, China, Europe and America. I had already read over 1,000 books. I had made friends with and learned from many outstanding, truly wise people of our time. I had accumulated a considerable amount of knowledge and experience. I also realized that I must, as soon as possible, transfer the knowledge of my experience to as many people as possible. At that point I already knew that the cause of all the ills which tormented people was ignorance. Again, as Socrates said, there is but one evil in the world, ignorance. And there is only one good, knowledge. If we look deeply into the causes of alcoholism, drug addiction, war, the self-destruction of humanity, the destruction of nature, depression or hatred, you, dear reader, will be surprised, because the main cause of all the misfortunes of mankind is ignorance. Most people don't know what they're doing, they're living in some kind of hallucinogenic dream. The only cure for this dream is knowledge. Knowledge in the field of science is dry information, and knowledge in the field of human development is always energy, a mentor, and action, repeated actions. As the folk wisdom says, give a man a fish, and you feed him for a day. Teach him to fish, and you feed him for a lifetime. All of these thoughts flew into my head in 1 second, as if God himself appeared in the sky and gave me a good kick in the rear. Go and do something, go and share knowledge, experience and energy with people all around the world. Inspired by this divine kick, I asked my team to organize masterclasses in different cities with one condition. I did not need a speaker's fee, I didn't even need the attendees to pay for tickets. I would come to the various cities and put on a powerful, brilliant masterclass, but only on one condition, that there would be at least 500 people in attendance. At that time, such training sessions were in vogue, and my team very quickly organized a tour consisting of 41 cities. Since I was still running a business at the time these classes were being organized, I asked my team to put together the schedule so that there would be no breaks or interruptions. The tour would be conducted in 41 days. My team proceeded to contact the organizers of masterclasses in the different cities and quickly settled everything. A few days later, I had a long list of 41 cities in 5 different countries, in which I promised to hold 41 8-hour masterclasses. Up to that point, everything seemed to be going well, but as is the case so often in life, the devil is in the details. When we began to discuss logistics, it quickly became clear that there were no flights between some cities, or there were inadequate roads, and the distances between some of the cities were colossal. Since I had already given my word to all the organizers of the masterclasses and we had agreed on a schedule, I had no choice but to pay to rent an airplane in order to make the tour work. There was no other way to accomplish the task. At that time, I was still dealing with some personal complexes, and the question of clothing came up. I carefully calculated the number of shirts, ties, pairs of pants, etc. that I would need for 41 days, and it turned out that I would need to take a large amount of clothing and shoes. Today, I have no problem speaking or putting on a performance while wearing shorts. Today I understand that people, the students who value my knowledge, are not overly interested in my expensive shoes, my tie, shirt, cufflinks or watches. They are there to observe, listen, and acquire knowledge. If they're primarily concerned with my shoes, shirt or tie, they're not my students. I went through with this experience, 41 consecutive days of 8-hour of masterclasses in 41 cities. Today, of course, I would not care to repeat this feat, but at the time, I was younger, charged with enthusiasm and ideas of enlightenment. I was on the road during the night, getting to the next city early in the morning. I would sleep for a couple of hours and in the morning and then take the stage to lead a masterclass for 4 hours before lunch, took a break for an hour, and then conducted the classes for another 4 hours after lunch. I had no time to dry the sweat on my brow, and at the end of the day I would already be on my way to the next city with my mountain of suitcases. Quite honestly, by the 11th day, I physically became ill. My body was constantly screaming to me, "You idiot, you're killing me, stop it." But my sense of responsibility and duty would not let me quit. People had put in a lot of work, sold tickets, were waiting to see me, and I could not let them down. The masterclass held in the city of Krasnodar was especially difficult. The temperature outside was 45 degrees Celsius, and the air conditioning unit in the auditorium, which contained about 1,000 people, broke. The heat in the building was terrible, and to add to my misery, the stage was illuminated by powerful spotlights which were more like heat lamps. Many years have passed, and I can still feel the heat from those dozen spotlights in that hot, stuffy, crowded room. By the 25th day of my tour, with 25 cities under my belt, I arrived in Krasnodar already exhausted. On the 26th day in the 26th city, my moral and physical fatigue was compounded by feelings of feverishness. Within an hour of the masterclass, I felt like I was performing in a hot oven next to a baking turkey, while needing to remain composed and to articulate to the audience how to manage their thoughts and feelings and model their behavior. I recall that the first 4 hours were complete torture, and the second 4 hours I simply cannot remember, due to the incredible heat. Only my willpower and my sense of responsibility kept me from fainting. When I got to the airport after the end of the class that day, I learned that I'd suffered a terrible heat stroke. While flying in the plane to the next city, I repeatedly covered my head with a wet towel in an attempt to relieve the pain and heat which burned within my head. By some miracle, I survived the tour without a break, without a hospital visit, for 40 days. On the 41st day I was in Evpatoria, a small, cozy town located on the Black Sea. To say that I was feeling tired would be an enormous understatement. It's impossible to really describe in words the accumulated fatigue from performances, flights, stations and trains that I had experienced. When I got to my lodgings 3 hours before my 41st and final masterclass, I felt like a totally squeezed out orange. You've probably seen many times how juice is squeezed from an orange, but imagine that orange is squeezed again, and then again, until there is no orange, but only a flattened peel, being squeezed and squeezed again for juice. This repeatedly squeezed orange peel was my body, psyche and soul. Suddenly, the organizer of my final masterclass phoned me in my room and offered to take me to the beach to get some fresh air. At the time, I was already doing the exercise, Be Healthy. I thought, well, why not have a swim in the sea, it will help recharge your empty batteries. I grabbed a towel and in a few minutes we were in Alex's car heading towards the sea. This happened to be a very cold autumn day, the wind from the sea was blowing cold, not a soul was on the beach, with huge cold waves crashing onto the sand. Having driven the car close to the water, we faced the first difficulty. The wind was so strong that it was hard to open the door. I don't know why, but that made us laugh. Getting out of the car, we felt all the charms of the burning, icy air, and we realized that we looked rather ridiculous, being alone on this completely deserted, inhospitable beach. Our appearance and our equally insane intention to swim in the icy water in strong winds caused us to laugh even more. If you had seen us then, you would have thought that 2 patients had escaped from a madhouse and were trying to commit suicide in the frigid water. The wind was so strong that it was physically difficult for us to walk towards the sea. Leaning forward, you would take a step, but the wind carried you back again. The noise from the wind was so strong that we could not hear one another's voices, but we continued to laugh like 2 madmen. We laughed at ourselves, at the danger, the wind, the cold. Somehow we plunged into the icy water, and soon, driven back by the cold air, we ran to the car, closed the doors and continued to laugh. On the drive back to the city, we didn't just laugh, we laughed like hyenas. When I stopped laughing and tried to calm down, my friend exploded with laughter and his laughter infected me. When he got tired of laughing, looking at me, he was like a bomb, exploding with laughter. After such a strange, crazy swim, I returned to my room and was surprised to find that I was full of strength and energy. I realized that this was a real miracle. The effects of 40 days of masterclasses, of physical and mental overloads, were completely washed away. I was full of energy, I periodically smiled and laughed again, and I was deeply impressed by this effect of recharging of the batteries. I'd never experienced it, I'd never seen it, I didn't even know that it was possible. It was obvious to me that the reason for my emotional upsurge was laughter. The next day, after my tour was over, I was in my office. I asked my assistant to find and bring me all the books devoted to laughter that he could. There were very few of them at that time. Books about sadness, despair, depression, neuroses and psychoses were written by the thousands, but on the benefits of laughter there was almost no information. I was lucky, though. I didn't just find the information, I found the man who revolutionized the world of laughter. My great friend from India is Dr. Laugh, as people call him today, made in Kataria. When you do something very important and good for people, the universe helps you in return. 2 days later, I invited the creator of laughter yoga to Moscow. It so happened that he had some free time, and had long dreamed of visiting Russia, and he gladly accepted my invitation. 3 days later, my students and I were drinking tea in my office with the legendary creator of laughter yoga. I can safely say this about my friend, Maiden. This is a man who changed the world. I'm happy to recount his success story. Dr. Kataria lived in virtual destitution, with no money, no house of his own, nothing going for him at all. He and his wife did not live, but survived, in the truest sense of the word. One day, an acquaintance of his brought him an article from a regional medical journal about the benefits of laughter during the postoperative period. This inspired my friend to collect all the information that he could about the benefits of laughter, deeply analyzing all of the available data and research. One night, at 4 a.m., it dawned on him. He realized that it was much better to use laughter and smiles not to recover faster after an operation, but to stay away from the operating table completely. He realized that laughter and smiles contain a huge amount of positive energy which strengthens the immune system, charges the person mentally and physically for the whole day, and can help prolong human life by 7 to 10 years. When my friend realized that laughter and smiles could help all mankind, he came up with the brilliant idea to create a laughter club. He barely waited until 7 a.m., then ran to the nearest park, where he found 2 acquaintances, kindred spirits. One of them was a bank employee, the other was a taxi driver, and together they created the first laughter club in the history of mankind. After a week, 50 enthusiasts belonged to the club. Every morning, these people gathered in the park, laughed together, charging one another with positive energy, and then went about their daily business. However, after a few days, they began to run out of funny jokes and anecdotes, and the nature of the banter began to turn more risque and vulgar. Some of the people began to say things like, "Well, it's time to disperse, sorry, it was great, it was so fun, I really enjoyed laughing like this every morning to laugh, but there is nothing more to laugh at." At this moment, the genius of Maiden Kataria appeared. He begged the people to come again the next day for one more meeting. That night, my friend came up with a solution. He invented laughter yoga. He realized that people have been taught that laughter without reason was the sign of a fool. He realized that from earliest childhood, children were forbidden to laugh in school, all the way through university. To remove this fear, this complex which was imposed on us by an unconscious, negative societal construct since childhood, he came up with simple exercises, called his system, laughter yoga, and today there are more than 23,000 such clubs around the world. Today, laughter yoga is taught in schools in India. Soldiers in the Indian Army use laughter yoga to help to overcome the stresses of their work. Its techniques were even used in Indian prisons, and its popularity spread to China and Japan. Employers and corporate executives quickly realized that a 10-minute break to engage in laughter yoga markedly improved employee performance, people missed less work due to illness, and in general laughter yoga helped to create a more friendly, positive environment within companies, as well as increases in productivity and quality of work. Speaking of my friend Maiden Kataria, I fondly remember his first visit to Moscow. He wanted to ride the metro, the Moscow subway, and as we know, in any subway in the world people appear gloomy, tired and tortured. Maiden Kataria, like a magician, was able to make people smile and put them in good humor. You probably heard that laughter is contagious, and I not only heard, but saw with my own eyes how laughter and good cheer went viral in a gloomy, tired subway car. My friend took out his phone. His phone was not connected to any network, he just pretended that he was talking to someone on the phone, and started laughing. I watched the scene unfold. Maiden's laughter was so cheerful and infectious that gradually people in the subway car, one by one, began to smile. The louder, the more joyful my friend laughed into his phone, the more smiles appeared on the passengers' faces. Looking at it objectively, I am again struck by the simplicity of my friend's genius. Indeed, if you were to suddenly stand up and laugh loudly, it's likely that people would be a little unnerved by the simple, loud, cheerful laughter. Most people would think that this person was crazy. But my friend put his phone to his ear and pretended that he was laughing along with someone in conversation with him. This laughter seemed more natural, and did not frighten the passengers. In this book, I want to personally and on behalf of millions of happy people convey my thanks to the brilliant Maiden Kataria, who gave laughter yoga to the world. Knowing how effectively it works, I am sure that it will eventually be implemented in every school, university, every bank and factory, as an absolutely free source of health, energy, quality of life and efficiency. While studying the benefits of smiles and laughter, I learned the history of the ancient Greek philosopher, Democritus. It's amazing to think of it now, that 2,500 years ago, this genius knew that everything was made up of atoms. Democritus went down in history as a laughing philosopher. Wherever drawing or likeness of him, he is always laughing. At that time, the average life expectancy on Earth was about 25 years. Democritus, thanks to laughter, lived to be 106 years old. Yet another proof positive of the use of laughter and smiles. I also want to express my personal gratitude to Ron Gutman, a scientist, a writer, a wonderful man who devoted years of his life to scientifically prove the benefits of laughter. Ron Gutman as a child dreamed of helping all mankind, dreamed of becoming a superhero who saved the world. You and I both know that thoughts become material. As an adult, the talented scientist, Ron Gutman, proved to millions of thinking people the great benefit of laughter. A team of scientists studying baseball cards came to the conclusion that the players depicted in the photographs who were smiling lived an average of 7 years longer than players who were depicted with sour, sullen, gloomy faces. Ron Gutman's research also proved, based on a large number of scientific facts and statistics, that children on average smile 500 times a day, while adults smile but 17 times. When we smile or laugh, our body is filled with oxygen, a large amount of hormones of happiness are released, we become much more creative and inventive, our performance is increased by 50%, and we are less tired. Consequently, we are able to do more, we become more effective in life. When we smile and laugh more often, our joy is transferred to our friends and loved ones, and they become 20% happier and more cheerful. Scientists have carried out the following experiment. In a room where there were people who were shown an actor wearing a sad face and not speaking, the mood among all the people in the room became melancholy within 3 minutes. When we smile and laugh with our family or our loved ones, the mood among all is lifted. When we frown or wear a sour facial expression, the mood falls. From the bottom of my heart, I want to thank Ron Gutman for his gift to humanity. Maiden Kataria and Ron Gutman are real superheroes who have made our world kinder and brighter. I recommend that you watch Ron Gutman's presentations on the wonderful series, TED Talks. And now, dear friend, let's dive into a philosophical, strategic and semantic analysis of the intellect exercise, 200 smiles per day. To a shallow, superficial person, this exercise may seem primitive, simple-minded and silly. But a thinking person will easily understand that the exercise of 200 smiles per day is not just a source of positive energy, not just an energy charger, it is the key to happiness, prosperity and health. The fact is that happiness is not a goal, but a way of life. Happiness is always within us. As Socrates said, every man has the sun, just let it shine. Happiness is something that each of us should develop every day and generously share with our friends, loved ones, and the whole world. One of the most serious misconceptions that most people have is that they believe that happiness needs to be achieved or earned, but the truth is that happiness needs only to be produced. As a generator produces electricity, so is a person obliged to produce as much joy, happiness and laughter as possible, every day. One of the most important meanings of life on earth is to fill every minute with joy, smiles and laughter. No one is going to do it for us. It's the sacred duty of us all to give the world 200 smiles every day, to laugh as often as possible. Engage your imagination and fast forward to 2 years from now. There are now 100 million intellect trainers. Super jump is practiced by billions of good, kind, hardworking people. Most people have realized that their laughter and smiles are required to enlighten our world. When people laugh and smile from their souls and their consciousness, they avoid negative thoughts and feelings. Don't fight anger, depression, hatred, resentment, and ingratitude. It's wiser not to take notice of them at all, but to focus your attention on generating positive emotions, laughter, and joy. The exercise, 200 smiles, is like a powerful lamp that you consciously use to turn on the power of super jump every day. One of our strategies is to artificially power a generator of happiness. The fact is that your brain does not distinguish between artificial laughter and natural laughter that occurs after you hear a funny joke or story. The number of hormones of happiness produced is absolutely the same. The amount of positive energy allocated is also the same. What does that mean? Imagine a man of ignorance, who was compelled to be happy according to the rules of the world that we live in. First he would finish school, then complete his studies at a brilliant university, then build a house, perhaps plant a tree, raise children, earn money, and engage in charity. When we look at the lives of such people who are living practically unconsciously, we realize that they in fact live their lives in misery, sadness, and desperate longing. In pursuit of happiness, they never catch up with it. In search of happiness, they never find it. Why? Because happiness is within us. Let's compare a person to an electric power generator. In order for the generator to put out the energy that we need to power the generator. When the generator rotates, it produces energy. A person as a generator creates a tremendous amount of positive energy, happiness, and joy powered by 200 smiles a day. Imagine a dark room. When we were children, we were afraid of the dark. This is an innate fear passed down to us from our ancestors, who for thousands of years were afraid of the night, because at night predators are much stronger and more effective than humans. Fear of the dark comes from our ancestors. It is hardwired into our genes, our instincts. Imagine yourself as a small child standing at the entrance to a dark room. You are afraid to enter it, but once you click the switch and turn on the light in our instance being super jump, the light of happiness and joy drives away the darkness. In fact, to fight the darkness is foolish. To fight against depression, resentment, anger, all sorts of negative feelings, is very silly. It's simply wiser and much more effective to, with super jump, turn on as many light bulbs as possible. As soon as the light of knowledge and awareness shines forth, darkness runs away from it at a speed of 350,000 kilometers per second. The intellect exercise, 200 smiles per day, is a key part of the super jump system. Our system is such that we perform the exercises and observe ourselves objectively, turn on the higher person within us, and analyze how our energy, mood, and behavior models change during the exercises. Our entire lives have been a continuation of our feelings and thoughts, but once we include a higher person, who understands that our thoughts and feelings are not completely ours and can be easily controlled, we artificially begin with the help of 200 smiles, to forcibly and consciously control the muscles of the face. We begin to smile. At that point, our faces communicate these feelings which are produced. Our minds and consciousness are calmed and convinced that everything is super, everything is fine. If the face is smiling, it means, I'm a winner, I'm healthy, I'm confident. Even from artificially produced smiles, the brain receives a huge amount of positive energy, strength, and hormones of happiness. In fact, 200 smiles is a universal switch which constantly lights the lamp of happiness, the lamp of joy. This energy costs nothing, and with it the whole universe is permeated with good, positive energy. You only need to learn how to use it. In ancient Egyptian culture, great importance was given to subject of happiness. According to Egyptian mythology, before man was to enter heaven, he was always asked 2 questions. The first was, are you happy? The second was, have you made other people happy? I think that we can agree, dear reader, that there is great wisdom in these questions. The truth is that we first develop happiness within ourselves, and then this happiness helps us to achieve glory and prosperity. Most people live on a different principle. First I have to make money, build a house, raise children, and then I will be happy. But in fact it's much wiser and more effective to produce happiness and energy with 200 smiles a day, and this happiness and energy will allow you to build your house even faster, to achieve satisfaction and prosperity. It's that simple. The complete wisdom and beauty of the intellect exercise, 200 smiles, can be expressed in 4 words. first happiness, then prosperity. Chapter 7. Intellect Exercise. I am master of my thoughts. Scientists have estimated that 50,000 thoughts pass through the mind of the average person every day. Unfortunately, 40,000 of these thoughts are colored by negativity or uncertainty. 80% of all people on Earth experience some sort of emotional pain: loneliness, poverty, disease, loss of purpose in life, depression, or alcoholism. Out of 10 people living on Earth, only 2 are happy, healthy, and successful. Why is this the case? Because most people have 80% negative thoughts. They constantly criticize themselves, they're dissatisfied with something or another. Oh, I've gained weight, I'm running late, I've said something stupid. 80% of the thoughts in the minds of these unfortunate people unconsciously lead them to failure, loneliness, defeat, and poverty. Most of us reading this text, as thinking and developing people, know that thoughts become reality. We've all read the books of Napoleon Hill or the book, The Secret. We read a lot of intelligent books, which proves the simple truth: thoughts are material. Our thoughts are the blueprints from which our future is created. Our thoughts are the seeds from which our future grows. A person is the sum of his or her thoughts. But, to know that thoughts are material and to have the ability to control them are completely different things. You can theoretically know how to swim, but never go into the water. Once, I really believed that training sessions and masterclasses could truly improve our world. I conducted hundreds of different training sessions, and at the time I was quite proud of myself. I didn't make any money from these endeavors. I gave all of the money to the organizers of these sessions. Naturally, at every event I convinced people that thoughts are material, that you need to think positively, and so on, and so forth. One day, though, I had an incident that completely changed my life. I conducted a large, 2-day workshop for 10,000 people. The huge auditorium was full. I shared my experience with people. We did a variety of exercises. After my masterclass had ended, I went to my hotel room late at night, laid down to sleep, and was struck by the idea: what if I were to fall asleep every night with good, positive thoughts? These thoughts would spin around in my head all night, and serve to create a new, positive personality. Great idea. I waited for the moment when my brain began to turn off, when I knew that in a couple of minutes I would fall into a deep sleep. And in these last couple of minutes of consciousness before falling asleep, I tried to fill my mind with positive thoughts. But, I failed. The first negative thought came to mind. My friend had broken his leg and tomorrow I must go to visit him in the hospital. Tomorrow there will be a tax audit. I need to have my accountants get all of the paperwork ready. Stop, screamed my inner voice. I want to go to sleep with good positive thoughts. Why am I thinking negatively? After all, I'm a great coach and speaker. I teach people that thoughts are material, that one needs to think only positively, and yet I could not take control of my thoughts before going to bed even for 2 minutes. Right then and there all of my sleep was blown away. I jumped out of bed angry at myself, angry at the fact that I could teach other people, but could not control my own thoughts. I jumped out of bed and like a lion in a cage began to pace up and down the hotel room, talking to myself. As it turns out, the theoretical knowledge that we obtain from the books does not work. That is, we know that thoughts are material and that we need to manage our thoughts, but at the same time we do not know how to manage them. The second conclusion I made was that I urgently needed to find an exercise that would help one to control one's thoughts. I sent out a request to the universe. Universe, God, send me an exercise that will help me and other people to get rid of negative thoughts. I don't know who came up with this exercise, but I will always be grateful to the person. It is brilliant in its simplicity. This exercise we call, I am master of my thoughts, but in everyday life I use a simple name, Rezinochka, in Russian, the rubber band. The essence of the exercise is very simple. Put a rubber band around your wrist, turn on the higher person within yourself, carefully watch your thoughts objectively, and if any thoughts of negativity or doubt enter your consciousness, give the rubber band a snap on the inside of your wrist. In this way, we create a painful tactile anchor that a negative thought equals pain. The process of cleansing the mind of negative thoughts through pain resembles a house cleaning. If you don't clean your house or apartment, it becomes overwhelmed with dust, cobwebs, and dirt. In the house there exist many microbes and insects which are a threat to human health. To clean our house, we take a vacuum cleaner, a broom, a mop and rags, and clean away all of the dirt. After a while, all of the garbage has been gathered up and put into garbage bags, which we put out for the trash collector to take away. The same thing happens within our consciousness with the help of the rubber band. Negative thoughts are poison, they're garbage, and we use the exercise with the rubber band to throw them out of our lives once and for all. Half of our students know this exercise very well, but most of them stop after a few days or weeks. The rubber band breaks and the person says to him or herself, "Well, I'll find a replacement for it tomorrow, or the day after tomorrow." And, of course, the rubber band is not replaced, because thoughts, events, and streams of information carry matters away, and carry them away in the very opposite direction of development, improvement, and prosperity. This is a good example of the importance of the intellect trainer, the pedagogical chain, and the developing environment which we create in our super jump groups. As it turns out, it's not enough to know the exercise, we need an intellect trainer and an environment that forces us to perform this exercise regularly. The super jump method is such that we perform 8 different exercises in a circle, so to speak. But this does not mean that you have to do only one exercise on per day. Every one of us, walking along the super jump path of development, performs several different exercises every day, those that you want to perform, those that you like, those that at a given point in your life are more suitable or beneficial for solving a particular problem. Every 8 days, though, we consciously go back to this exercise, turn on our inner higher person, objectively observe ourselves as we do the exercise, and share our thoughts and feelings with our fellow students. I'd like to express a special thanks here to those Hollywood screenwriters who in many films show how the main character performs a variation of this exercise with the rubber band. I've personally seen 5 films in which the protagonist banishes negative thoughts or doubts by snapping himself with a rubber band worn on the wrist. In itself, the exercise, "I am master of my thoughts," is quite powerful, but the real strength of super jump consists of the synergy of all 8 exercises and regular performance of these exercises. There are many misconceptions in today's world. One is that if you perform an exercise for 40 consecutive days, it becomes a regular habit, part of your instincts, your behavior pattern is changed and thereby your life is changed. In fact, this is a myth. This approach to personal development doesn't work, and here's why. When you charge your mobile phone every day, it's impossible to imagine that once you charge your phone, you will use for the rest of your life without recharging it again. It's the same within the sphere of personal development. There are so many negatives, distractions, harmful influences, destructive events and negative people around you, that it is impossible to perform an exercise once and have it change your life permanently. If we compare the development of our energy, intellect and positive mentality with the development of our physical body, imagine a fitness trainer saying to you, "Do this exercise for 40 days, and this exercise will work for you and become part of your routine for the rest of your life." I think we can agree that this is nonsense, deception, delusion. In order for your muscles to be strong, you need to train them at least 3 times every week. It's impossible to give yourself rock-hard abs in 40 days and have them stay that way with no further effort for the rest of your life. The development of our energy, our positive mindset, our elevated levels of happiness and competitiveness works along the same principle. If you do these exercises regularly, you will grow. If you stop performing them, you will remain at a peak for a while through the inertia that your previous efforts have created, but then you will gradually slide downward. The power of super jump is that the intellect trainer and student groups hold one another accountable, and do not allow a person to abandon his or her daily climb up the spiral staircase to that most vivid, cherished dream. Chapter 8. Intellect Exercise, the Posture of Kings and Queens. In a course on public speaking that I once attended, I learned a particularly startling fact. It has been demonstrated that when we communicate with another person or with an audience, the source of the impact that we have on these people is as follows. 55% is a result of our appearance, posture, smile and gestures. 38% of the impact depends on our voice, its volume, range and power of modulation. Only 7% of the impact that we have on our listeners comes as a result of the words that we convey to people. I remember my surprise at learning this scientific fact. I well remember thinking at that moment, that if our body has such a huge impact on other people, what kind of power does it have on our inner world? Once after a public speaking engagement, I went for a walk in a nearby park and began to consciously observe people. One young man walked towards me with his head down, his shoulders slumped, shuffling with an old man's gait, no smile on his face, his expression one of suffering and pain. Looking closely at this random passer-by whom I did not know, I was surprised. I did not know this man, This was the first time that I'd ever seen him, but his posture told me everything about his inner state. I don't know what happened to him. Maybe he had gone bankrupt, maybe he was betrayed, robbed or slandered, but his body screamed to me, I feel terrible, I'm suffering, I'm miserable. During this same walk in the park, within a few minutes, another person approached me. His gait was completely different, his head was high, he had a smile on his face, his shoulders were squared, he walked with straight, confident steps. I had never seen this man before, either, but his posture also spoke to the internal state of his being. His body seemed to shout to everyone around him, look at me, I am a winner, I am a confident, happy person, I have a lot of energy. Comparing these two models of behavior, I came to a conclusion. Subconsciously, I don't want to have anything to do with losers or whiners. I felt that the man in the park who was confident, smiling and walking at a firm gait aroused much more sympathy and respect within me, like a guy you'd be proud to go through life shoulder through shoulder with. Continuing my walk through the park, I immediately remembered a number of ancient paintings and engravings, which were of slaves and servants, always depicted with their heads lowered. Any king, conqueror or warlord should have his head held high, chest out, shoulders back. Slaves, servants, and captives always stand with their heads down. Here's why. When people feel bad, when they lose, they automatically drop their shoulders and head. Subconsciously, losers, sick, unhappy and enslaved people take the posture of a loser, the posture of a slave. Winners always, anywhere in the world, in any country, of any nationality, walk with their heads held high. Thinking about these obvious facts, I came up with a simple idea. Throughout all of our lives, our brain and nervous system control our muscles. So, what if we were to take control of our muscles, take control of our bodies and make them take the posture of a king? In this manner, our bodies would command our emotional state, our energy level, our moral state and our connections with others. What do you need to do to accomplish this? Primarily, you need to engage the role of a higher inner person, to look at yourself as if from above, and to command your body to take the posture of a king or a queen. No matter how hard, no matter how tired or overwhelmed you are feeling, through the force of your will, compel yourself to play the role of a king or queen. Raise your head, smile, straighten your shoulders, turn on your imagination and imagine that you are already a king, already a winner, already a champion and walk 10 to 20 steps with the springy, confident, energetic gait of a victor. You will be amazed how quickly the biochemistry of your body will change, how quickly your confidence, optimism, strength of mind and charisma will increase. Through the combination of physiology, self-control and your imagination, you're already imagining yourself as a winner, a champion, the best. Carrying yourself with the posture of a king or a queen has a tremendous impact. In just a minute's time, you will feel like a completely different person. This is how I carry out the exercise. I have psychologically trained myself so that when I see on the clock on the hour or half hour, I engage my higher inner person, look at myself from above and artificially control my muscles and my body. I force my body to accept the posture of a king, albeit briefly, for 1 or 2 minutes. However, this is enough to get a huge influx of energy, confidence and self-esteem. I do this especially if I need to speak in front of an audience or conduct a Skype conference. Before I begin a speech, I always turn on my higher, inner person, take on the posture of a king and only then begin my speech, presentation or intellect training session. What is the difference between the conscious person and the unconscious? A conscious person knows that he is not his thoughts, his feelings, his behavior model. He is a higher person who can easily control those thoughts, feelings, body and behavior model. By nature, man has the right to choose. We can walk with the posture of a slave or a loser or, if only briefly, despite whatever exhaustion or fatigue we may be feeling, despite any stress, injustice or other negative factors affecting our lives, consciously and conspicuously take on the posture of a king, a queen, and confidently go through life overcoming defeats, obstacles and failures. Fortunately, you have a choice. You can decide to be a loser or a winner, a slave or a king. Chapter 9. Intellect Exercise. I am master of my feelings. Aristotle very accurately once said, "Woe to those people who are slaves to their feelings." In each of us live two entities. The first is the legacy of the animal world, our instincts. The second is given to us by God. It is our soul, which is able to love, create, invent, to become friends with others. A lifelong struggle goes on between our animalistic and divine entities. Our animal instincts make us behave like animals, while our task is to develop humanity, kindness, love, and a positive mentality throughout our lives. One of the most important tasks facing us is to learn how to manage our feelings. This exercise, which I will tell you about, was given to me by an outstanding person, my teacher Viktor Frankl. Before I tell you about the exercise, I want to give you a little bit of background on Mr. Frankl, a great scientist, writer, therapist, and citizen of the world. Before World War II, Viktor Frankl was already a famous doctor and scientist in Vienna. After Hitler had captured Vienna and unleashed the terrible Second World War, the Nazis began to send the Jews to concentration camps. Viktor Frankl and his wife were given a visa by the British government, but his parents were not given one. This noble son of a scientist then decided to remain with his parents and share their fate, whatever that may be. All those who were close to Viktor Frankl perished in the concentration camps. He himself went through 3 of the camps, but he did not give up, did not break, and he did what he could to help his fellow prisoners. Even at times when he himself was on the brink of death, he never lost the force of his spirit. While in a concentration camp, he continued to mentally record his scientific work. What was this amazing scientist, in the midst of the chaos and suffering all around him, thinking about as he continued his scientific work? Even before the war, he had set a goal to find out why people suffer from depression, why people drink, use drugs, what is the cause of neuroses, psychoses, depression, alcoholism, and drug addiction. Imagine a hungry, freezing, exhausted concentration camp inmate who thinks about other people, who lived out in his mind what would happen after the war and the suffering were ended. If you ever feel bad and you begin to think of giving up, I urge you to read the book, Say Yes to Life, by Viktor Frankl. Then, dear reader, you will learn what real torments and sufferings our hero passed through, and I believe your problems will then seem trifling and insignificant in comparison. It was Viktor Frankl who gave us this amazing, simple and powerful exercise, I am master of my feelings. The essence of the exercise is very simple, to mentally break the chain of stresses, attacks, humiliations, ingratitude, any negative impacts on you and your reactions to them. For example, say for instance that you are driving along in your car, and another driver clips you, so that you almost have an accident. The first reaction is naturally to get angry, shout and curse at this crazy scoundrel. At this moment, however, break the chain of these negative impacts on you and your reactions. Try to count to 100. You may still be offended, angry and swearing, but at the same time, be sure to turn on your higher inner person, observe your thoughts and feelings as from above, remembering once again that you are the master of your feelings and thoughts, and not someone else. You have to control your thoughts and feelings, not some fool who is a rude, terrible driver. Let's look at another example. Let's say that in one of your social networks, someone is being very mean and dirty towards you, has unfairly slandered you, poured mud on you. Naturally, the reaction of any normal person would be to get angry, take offense and begin to hate. That's what most people do. They start to get angry, to hate, to take offense, sometimes taking offense for years, going through life with that bitterness in them. Thus, they poison their lives, the lives of their loved ones, damage their immune systems and their health in general. If you develop according to the Super Jump system, however, then at least once every 8 days, you will consciously perform the exercise, I am master of my feelings. People master this exercise at their own pace, some within a few weeks, some within a few months, but as you learn how to manage your feelings, you will understand that your feelings and your thoughts are not really you. You are a kind, bright, good and strong person who easily manages your emotions and feelings. You will never be a slave to your emotions and feelings. Negative emotions will no longer steal your energy, time and happiness. Let me share some examples with you from my own experience as an intellect trainer. I tasked one of my students, the owner of 2 large dental clinics, to control his emotions throughout the day. If a negative incident took place, or he felt himself under attack emotionally, he was to not allow himself to become angry or offended until after he immediately counted to 100. My student went to one of his clinics in the morning and at a meeting there was made aware that one of his employees had caused great material damage to the business. Since my student was a very temperamental, hot-tempered leader, if I had not specifically tasked him to control his emotions, he would have immediately begun to criticize, swear, and probably would have fired someone. His employees, knowing the explosive nature of their boss, were prepared to withstand his explosion of anger, perhaps some firings, a major flow of dark emotions. But instead, a miracle happened. My student forced himself to count to 100, and he calmly, with a smile on his face, began to perform this exercise and watch himself as from above, paying specific attention to his thoughts, feelings, and behavior. His staff exhaled audibly, straightened their shoulders, and began to actively discuss how to deal with this critical situation. While my student was counting and had reached 50, one of his employees came up with a solution to the situation, avoiding any financial loss. Moreover, they found a new way to raise profits. The next day, the student called and told me the story, thanking me for the exercise. I am master of my feelings. Another example took place involving another of my students, a lawyer. He was about to leave his office to go to court, but someone had carelessly parked so as to block his car in the parking lot, and my student could not leave. A wave of hatred and anger rose within him, but he did not let these negative emotions and feelings capture his mind. He immediately began to perform the exercise, breaking the chain between the attack of negative emotions on his consciousness and his reaction. He said to himself, "Well, as my intellect trainer taught me, I'll count to 100, but then I'm going to get angry, hate, take offense, and shout." He began to count and only managed to count to 15, before the driver of the car blocking his appeared on the scene, apologized, and moved his vehicle. With a calm soul and a good mood, the lawyer got behind the wheel of his car and went on to his court case, which, by the way, he won. After this incident, he also called me and thanked me for the exercise. I am master of my feelings. I've observed thousands of such cases from my experience as an intellect trainer. Having learned to manage their emotions, people are able to put a stop to anger, irritability, hatred, the whole range of negative feelings and emotions. If someone is rude to them, if they are insulted, humiliated, or offended, they do not carry on with this dark, evil energy, they simply stop it. When you are able to understand and effectively perform this exercise, breaking the chain of dark emotions and reactions, the feelings and energy that fill the vacuum are as bright, warm sunlight. And you, dear reader, have the right to choose. You can choose to fight against negative, dark, foul emotions and feelings, but remember that the more you fight them, the more space they will occupy in your mind, the larger and stronger they will become within you. Let's recall Newton's third law of motion. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Again, my strategy is to ignore these thoughts and emotions, to give them as little attention, time, and energy as possible. The more of your time and energy that you give to dark, negative emotions, the greater they grow within you, and the more you begin to generate them within yourself. The choice is yours. The world is what it is. We cannot personally influence many processes that take place on Earth. We cannot influence macroeconomics, geopolitics, we cannot influence the minds of crazy, evil, or stupid people. But we can use the exercise, I am master of my feelings, to influence our own inner world, to make it brighter, kinder, and more positive. You decide. But if you choose the side of light, the exercise, I am master of my feelings, will help you to live longer, to be healthier, happier, and more prosperous. Chapter 10. Intellect Exercise, Audio Training. Some people believe in God, some believe in fate, some believe in the universe, but all thinking people are sure of one thing. God, fate, the universe created the greatest miracle, words. Words hold the greatest power on earth. Unfortunately, through ignorance, people have lost the instructions for using this force for the power of good, and today in most cases this great force is used by people for destruction, to create grief, disease, poverty, and depression. Just a few words can kill a talented person. Let's imagine, dear reader, that a fool conveyed a few words to a vulnerable composer such as, "You are a mediocre man," or, "You have no talent." Only 2 or 3 words can lead a talented person to suicide. 2 or 3 words killed a talented composer. Or vice versa, an intellect trainer can sincerely tell a person, "I know for a fact that you are talented and brilliant, and you will succeed." And a man who had lost faith in himself suddenly blooms like the dawn, like the sunrise, and goes on to create immortal masterpieces. With words, God gave us covenants. With words, we confess our love. Just 3 words, "I love you," can turn an ordinary, bleak life into a fairy tale. Words have the greatest power, but I only realized this when I was 37 years old. Until then, like many other ignorant people on earth, I used words as a destructive force. After all, no one had explained to me how to properly use this universal energy and power. Until I was 37 years old, like most people, I believed that words were divided into two groups. One group was vulgar, obscene words that cannot be spoken in a public place, and the rest of the words were those that made up the beautiful, rich English, Spanish, Chinese or Russian languages. But 17 years ago, I realized that I was constantly digging a hole for myself, constantly making myself weak, angry and unhappy, all because no one had taught me otherwise. Of course, I didn't have an intellect trainer who could explain to me how to properly manage the power of words. However, in order to understand and take control of the power of the word joystick, you must first understand how the superconsciousness works and how it interacts with words. Today, scientists know that all processes in the body are controlled by a superconsciousness, or the superconscience. To understand how brilliant you are, I want to tell you what is in your smart, bright, talented head. There are a lot of things there, but we are interested in those elements that are responsible for your memory, genius, competitiveness and decision-making. First, there are 100 billion neurons in your smart, brilliant head. Neurons are not just cells, not just transistors on which the entire range of computing appliances has been based. Every neuron is a small computer in itself, a small mind. How has this been scientifically proven? Very simply, individual neurons within the brain were isolated and placed in different environments, and through this it was determined that each neuron has 15 to 20 different states. Imagine that we pulled out one transistor from a computer, the transistor being the basic element of modern computer technology, and we put it in different environments: acid, alkali, cold, heat. The transistor will not react any differently at all in the various different environments, but the neuron is a small mind, a small computer. It understands that the environment that surrounds it has changed, and it reacts differently to different environments. So, the first amazing fact is that you have 100 billion little minds in your head, little computers that are capable of 15 to 20 different states. The second fantastic fact is that attached to each neuron are between 10,000 and 200,000 small, thin, wire connections. Scientists have calculated that the total length of the wires in your smart, brilliant head is more than 1,000,000 kilometers. If these connections were placed together in a single wire, the length would measure more than 3 times the distance from the moon to the Earth. The third scientific fact: when you learn something new, your brain acquires a new state. Let's say that a neuron, just one neuron, in your head has changed its state. It is obvious that then the whole brain has acquired a new state, a new quality. Scientists have calculated how many different new states that your brain can theoretically have and have given a fantastic answer. There are more potential new states available to your brain than there are atoms in the universe. Fact number 4. The length of the blood vessels in your amazing, brilliant mind is more than 160,000 kilometers. If all of those blood vessels were laid out in a single line, they would be able to circle our Earth 4 times. Just remember that your brain is fed with oxygen and polysaccharides. All of these facts prove that you are indeed a brilliant person. You are as brilliant as Albert Einstein, Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, Socrates or Confucius. It's only that no one has taught you to use this greatest divine power that is inside you. There are 2 very important scientific facts attached to this. The first is that adults learn faster than children, and the second is that if you begin to intensively develop your talent, your genius, it does not matter how old you are, even at 65 or 75 years old. Daily intellectual training is important. The time that you spend on the development of your genius is crucial. Using the right exercises and techniques in your intellectual, energy and emotional development are important. Let me tell you about another recent scientific discovery. A group of scientists posed the question: how many geniuses are born on Earth? How many of the total number of children born are geniuses? The answer is amazing: 98%. I think that the 2% non-genius segment of the population will not read this book, will not have anything to do with Super Jump, so with absolute certainty I say to you that you are a mega brilliant person, you are a person with great divine potential. To understand how words affect our lives, energy, happiness and genius, we need to understand the scale and power of our superconsciousness, our superintelligence. I hope the above facts have convinced you that your potential is huge, gigantic, endless. Now, we turn to the study of how words and our superconsciousness interact. Every 3 seconds your brain takes a 5-dimensional photo. Everything that you see, feel, hear and sense takes pictures and puts these photos into an endless archive. These experiences are always there within you. And as soon as you hear a familiar word, that word opens up one of the files stored in your superconsciousness. For example, I write the word dog. After reading this word, your superconsciousness opens the files that you associate with the word dog. For instance, someone has a favorite pet dog in the house, or someone was bitten by a dog as a child, so that after reading this word, from the depths of the superconsciousness that file was reopened and our reader recalled how his or her childhood was nearly ended by an angry, ferocious dog. The fact is that a given printed familiar word opens up emotions and experiences that have been stored in our superconsciousness. For some, given words relate to negative emotions, for others, positive. I'll write out the word, death, and each of us now has a new file opening up. The death of a brother or a mother, feelings of grief and fear for the death of children. There may be these and other word associations, but the point is that the mood has been worsened for all of us who read the word, death. The word unseals and opens the negative files of our pain, fears and worries. Whether we like it or not, one word has triggered a huge flow of emotions and experiences within our minds. In the same way, imagine that you went to your refrigerator, opened it, took out a yellow, fragrant lemon, washed it under a stream of water, took a sharp knife, cut off a thin slice of lemon, put it in your mouth and chewed on it. If you turned on your imagination while reading this, then 100% you have physically experienced salivation, as if we're really chewing the lemon. What happened? One word, lemon, has triggered our associations and experiences with this fruit. Not long ago, a very important and interesting scientific experiment was carried out. The test subject had blood taken from a vein at short intervals, which was quickly analyzed. Before the blood was drawn, different words were read to the person. When these words were negative, disease, ruin, poverty, betrayal, pain, death and disaster, the subject's hormonal background biochemistry completely changed, and hormones were released into the bloodstream which help us deal with illness, ruin, disaster, betrayal and resentment. But as soon as the experimenter began to read other words, happiness, love, joy, friendship, wealth, success, luck and victory, the hormonal composition of the test subject's blood changed again, and endorphins, hormones of happiness, were discovered in large quantities. Please note, dear reader, that the test subject only sat in place, doing nothing. He just heard the word, and hearing the words was enough to completely change the biochemistry and hormonal balances of the subject. Scientists in the Italian city of Parma made a very interesting discovery about 20 years ago. To me, this city is a culinary delight, for it is there that hard Parmesan cheese and divine Parma ham are produced. In this city there was a scientific laboratory that studied the brains of monkeys. Each monkey had thin, silver wires implanted in the area of the brain that was responsible for grasping actions. This procedure is absolutely harmless and humane. The scientists were then able to amplify the signals received and get a clear picture of the reaction of the brain during the grasping movements of the monkey's hand. One day at lunchtime, the scientist who was observing the monkey, who was sitting motionless and looking at the scientist with curiosity, took a bottle of water from the table in front of him. At that moment, the computer to which the wires were connected showed a flash of activity within the monkey's brain, as if the monkey had grabbed something. However, the scientist observed with certainty that monkey's hands did not move. Then the scientist replaced the bottle of water on the table, waited a while, and while watching the monkey's hands again picked up the bottle of water. Once again, the computer again showed a signal such as if the monkey had grasped something, but again the scientist saw for a fact that the monkey's hands did not move. This case led to the start of a series of scientific experiments that proved the existence of mirror neurons. And, pay attention to a very important fact. Your brain works almost the same when you read of or see someone kicking a ball, as if you had kicked the ball yourself. This experiment once again proves the great power of the word. No wonder the greatest, most famous book on earth begins with the phrase, "In the beginning was the Word." Now, I think it is easy to conclude that there are two categories of words which exist in any language, and their division is not based on vulgarity and non-vulgarity. Words are divided in a completely different way. There are words which are murderers. These are words that we associate with illness, ruin, defeat, betrayal, ingratitude and suffering, and words of triumph, happiness, victory, and so forth. These are all the words that when spoken, read or heard, we become happier, kinder, stronger and more brilliant. In every language, every nation has similar proverbs, As a ship will be named, so it will float, or, tell a man that he is a pig 100 times and he will grunt. Knowing this, we will use the power of words to increase our efficiency and our competitiveness, and to create a new happy, brilliant, strong, loving and confident personality. The power of words can be proven yet another way. It's obvious that words give birth to thoughts, thoughts give birth to actions, actions give birth to habits, habits give birth to fate. Do you want a new life, a new destiny? Just change the words that you use. Learn to use the power of the word to increase the efficiency of your life, to increase your competitiveness, for creative rather than destructive purposes. 500 years ago in Italy there was a terrible experiment. The Jesuit monks argued for a long time about which was the true language of God, Latin or Greek. At some point, they decided to conduct an experiment. Take newborn babies, feed them, take care of them, but do not speak to them. According to the logic of these monks, the children should have turned out this way. As soon as the children grew up, they would begin to speak the true language of God. The consequences of this experiment were disastrous. The children turned into adults physically, but not as people, and were creatures whose sexual instincts had been repressed severely. And if you look at yourself as is from above, at your life, your development, it will be quite obvious that through words we know the world around us, ourselves and people, through words we receive knowledge, the covenants of God, through words we convey our ideas, feelings and thoughts. Even mathematical equations are carried out first through words, and then signs: divide, multiply, add, subtract. I hope, dear reader, that I have managed to convince you of the great power of words. Now let's move on to the next of our 8 super jump exercises, audio training. In order to perform this exercise, we need any audio player or voice recorder, any device that can record sound and then play it back. By the way, the word tutor is derived from the word repeat. Repetition is the mother of learning. Our super jump audio training exercise usually consists of 3 different parts. The first part is a mantra built on a simple formula. There are 4 sentences. With every minute, I'm becoming more confident. With every hour, I'm becoming more confident. With every day, I'm becoming more confident. With every year, I'm becoming more confident. Within this verbal construct, the only thing within the formula that changes is time, minutes, hours, days and years. The main word in this magic mantra is becoming. Saying these words, we program ourselves to what we are already certain of. Most unconscious people do not know how to properly manage words to give themselves a new, happy, high-quality life. They often make the most common mistake. For example, they ask for health from fate, from the universe, from God. They say something like, universe, fate, God, grant me health. It's not hard to see, dear reader, that each time people express such a request, they program themselves to the fact that they are not in good health. People who do not know how to work with words often use the power of words not to their advantage, but to their detriment. They ask for health, wealth, love, friends, success, fame or confidence, but in fact they get the opposite effect. They program themselves for disease, poverty, loneliness, defeat, failure and obscurity. When we say health, it is important to remember that our body is constantly updated. This is due to the reproduction of cells. Each cell knows when to kill itself. This process is called apoptosis. When a cell kills itself, inside the cell is a bag of enzymes which cuts the cell into monomers, and these monomers are already food or building materials for neighboring cells. For example, stomach cells are updated about once every 3 days, skin cells once a week, bone cells every few months. The average cycle of our body's cellular renewal is 85 days. We don't experience any technical damage or negative effects of microbes, viruses and poisons. Of course, each individual's health needs to be dealt with individually, but the scientific fact remains. Our body is constantly updated. It is equally absolutely true that a good mood, and positive energy and psychological settings can give one health, energy and cheerfulness. It is very simple to use the most effective and natural tool of creation of a new body and apply it to give yourself a new life with new thoughts. Take the 4 sentences from the mantra above and change only one word in them. For example, you desire prosperity, and you write out the following mantra. With every minute, I'm becoming more prosperous. With every hour, I'm becoming more prosperous. With every day, I'm becoming more prosperous. With every year, I'm becoming more prosperous. Or, you desire good health. Write out the following mantra. With every minute, I'm becoming healthier. With every hour, I'm becoming healthier. With every day, I'm becoming healthier. With every year, I'm becoming healthier. Then, record this mantra on your audio device, play it in repetition, a loop, and just as you would do multiple repetitions in the gym to pump up your muscle groups, the same process takes place with the new psychological settings. The more hours you listen to mantras, the more quickly you achieve what you want. The second extremely effective technique is the creation of affirmations. Let's model the situation together. Imagine a man who lived in New York who at the age of 55 went bankrupt, and his life fell into the bottom of an abyss. However, he becomes a student of Super Jump and diligently and responsibly performs the intellectual exercises every day. Let's imagine that the poor fellow was left without means of livelihood. Then, our hero got a job in a cheap restaurant to wash dishes for minimum wage. He doesn't know what to do, those who know him have lost hope for him. But as he is washing the restaurant's dirty dishes, he's constantly, 4 to 5 hours a day, listening to the audio training exercises on his headphones. Imagine that this man has a dream, to be able to buy a luxury house on Long Island. Our hero, on the advice of his intellect trainer, has recorded a specific audio training mantra which included the following affirmations. An affirmation is a description of your future as if it has already happened. I'm the happiest man in the world. I'm having a housewarming party. I've bought my dream house. I am the happiest person in the world. I see the happy faces of my relatives and friends as I show them my new home. This is my bedroom, this is the fireplace room, this is the pool. I describe to them in detail the interior of my new home. I'm the happiest man in the world. I celebrate my housewarming, hear the congratulations of my relatives and friends. I'm the happiest man in the world. I thank fate, the universe, God for making my dream come true. I bought my dream house. I thank the team, I thank my mentors, I thank all the people who helped me to buy the house of my dreams. Note, dear reader, that we have used senses of vision, smell, taste, touch and hearing in the preparation of the affirmation. That is, we have used all 5 sources, 5 channels of information to our brain from the outside world. Similar to this affirmation, you can use any dreams of goals applicable to your situation, to buy a new car, to start your own business, to build a successful team. When creating audio training affirmations, just remember some simple rules. Your voice should be positive, similar to your inner voice. Use only good, positive, powerful words. The main thing is the number of hours that you listen to your audio training. Many people make this mistake. When they hear the term audio training, they usually say, "Oh, I always do this exercise. I have sheets of my affirmations on my refrigerator, on the mirror, and next to the bed. I look at them from time to time and say them." While it's possible to post sheets of affirmations all throughout the house, the truth of life is that the person is the sum of his or her thoughts. Let's imagine a naive such person who has posted the sheets of paper on which the affirmations are written all throughout his house. He wakes up in the morning, an alarm clock sounds, he is late for university or work, he dresses, washes, eats breakfast and runs out into the world. How much time, minutes, seconds, hours did he take to work with affirmations? Very little. And since thoughts are sketches of our future, since thoughts are seeds from which the future grows and a person forms his or her future with the help of the sum of thoughts, it is obvious that even if a person looks at the affirmations written down and repeats them for 2 minutes, the effect of these affirmations and repetitions is easy to count. 24 hours a day, 60 minutes an hour, 1,440 minutes in a day. At 2 minutes per day, only 1/720th of our time is spent working with the affirmations exercise. Naturally, any positive effect from such an effort will probably be minimal. Only a repeated, several hour-long exercise involving new psychological attitudes in the form of mantras and affirmations can give a person a new, happy, prosperous life and bring him or her closer to the desired dream or ideal. The third technique, which we as intellect trainers use when creating audio training, is a new mental attitude. For example, for you, the most confident person in the world could be Abraham Lincoln, Bruce Lee, Michael Jordan, and you understand that if they were your teachers, they would want you to surpass them. The greatest happiness for the real teacher, and for the intellect trainer, is when the students become even more talented, brighter, prosperous and happier, when they surpass the teacher. Let's imagine that the figures from life and history that you most respect are now watching you from above, and they see how you program yourself with new psychological attitudes. You already know that you have infinite intellectual, energetic, and emotional potential. Therefore, to raise your confidence to the stars, you record the following. I'm the most confident person in the world. My super confidence is 100 times stronger than Bruce Lee's. I'm the most confident person in the world. My confidence is 100 times stronger than Abraham Lincoln's. I'm the happiest person in the world. My confidence is 100 times stronger than Michael Jordan's. With these words, you squeeze out the maximum benefit for the development of your confidence. Having recorded your affirmations, your audio training follows a simple law. The more hours a day you listen to it, the faster you create your new, happier personality. To write out one audio training mantra usually takes a day or two, then we begin to listen to it. But every 8 days, we do all of the intellectual exercises in the Super Jump system, again, in sequence, as in a circle, spiraling upward, and we'll go back to the audio training exercise. You'll see how audio training works, how much you've grown, what needs to be improved or changed. That is, every 8 days you will not just improve your audio training, but you will manage the words, you will track the results, control the words that you hear. You'll do everything to avoid and remove the murderous words that generate disease, loneliness, unemployment, poverty, and suffering as much as possible, and replace them with the words of triumph and happiness, such as love, confidence, prosperity, joy, friendship, and success, inundating your mind and your environment with these ideals as much as possible. Chapter 11. Intellect Exercise. Protect yourself from informational poison. We live in two parallel worlds. Our body lives in the physical world, and our consciousness in the metaphysical world. The physical world consists of things that we can see, weigh, or measure. Kilograms, meters, volts, amperes, megabytes, etc. Our consciousness, our soul, our superconscience live in a metaphysical world, a world of our feelings, thoughts, ideas, and experiences. The metaphysical world is a world of happiness and longing, love and hate, joy and anger, respect and contempt, gratitude and envy. All of our ideas are born in the metaphysical world. Just as we cannot measure love, there are no units of measurement that can quantify respect, kindness, or happiness, but we know for a fact that these feelings, experiences, emotions, ideas, and thoughts also exist. Before a house is built, it is conceived in the metaphysical world. We in our thoughts and reflections define how many floors, rooms, etc. there will be in our new house, for example, before the plans are drawn up and the house is built in the physical world. In the physical world, people don't eat rotten meat because it is poisonous to our bodies. In the informational world, most people consume rotten, informational meat from morning to night. Ask yourself the question: can a person be healthy, happy, and energetic if he eats rotten meat every day, if she consumes poison? Of course not. In the physical world, people are afraid of the bite of a poisonous snake, and in the metaphysical world, these same people drink glasses of informational poison every day. It's not difficult to understand that over time, informational poison often does more harm than poison in the physical world. Let's do a mental experiment together. Turn on your imagination once again and imagine. A man was bitten by a snake. He urgently goes to a hospital. A doctor gives him a serum to help purify the blood, and after some time the man begins to regain his health. While he is being treated, however, he constantly consumes negative news, watches depressing movies, consumes informational poison for hours on end. Unlike the poison from the snake in the physical world, informational poisoning cannot be determined through a blood test, cannot be physically cured by doctors. Informational poison very quickly pollutes our thoughts, feelings, and emotions, and our thoughts are sketches of our future. We can come to a logical conclusion. Negative thoughts give rise to a negative, unhappy life. That's why we as intellect trainers protect our minds from informational poison every 8th day. Our brain, our consciousness is like a huge clean, dry white sponge, which greedily absorbs any information. Our brain loves to learn, it is genetically programmed to develop, and therefore greedily absorbs all surrounding information. The problem is, our mind, our consciousness does not discriminate according to the quality of the information it receives, and unfortunately, along with useful, positive information, absorbs a huge amount of informational poison. If we take that clean, dry sponge dip into a swamp, it will absorb dirt, germs, and stench. The clean sponge quickly turns discolored, dirty, and smelly. Dip the clean sponge into spring water, and it will be filled with pure, cool, life-giving water. Every 8 days throughout the course of our long lives, we perform an intellect exercise called Protect Yourself from Informational Poison, engage our inner, higher person and our superconsciousness and look at ourselves, our minds, as if from above, and evaluate the quality and usefulness of the information that our minds consume. We look at the sources of the information received, look at the information itself and evaluate it along the following parameters. Is it useful or harmful? Does it help us develop or make us stupid? Does it make us stronger or weaker? Is it good or evil? Is it from the past or the future? When we evaluate information along the time principles of past, present and future, it's important to remember a simple axiom. The building materials for future victories should be taken from the future. Allow me to illustrate two more arguments proving the necessity and importance of the intellect exercise. Protect yourself from informational poison. 1. In recent years, the amount of information created in the world has grown thousands of times and our brain does not have the time to process and assimilate all of it. If a person eats 1 carrot a day, it's likely to be good for the body, but if the same person eats a bucket of carrots every day, he or she may die. In today's world, huge flows of information literally trample people's minds. An overabundance of information leads people to stress, depression and neuroses. 2. Today, corporations, politicians, sects and opinion shapers, among others, are hunting for our minds and our souls. Their goal is to take up as much space as possible in our heads, in our minds. Their goal is to manipulate us. Their goal is to make us buy unnecessary goods and services, to influence us politically. In the modern world, our consciousness has become an object of hunting and conquest. Every 8th day, we protect our minds from the destructive, negative and meaningless information that comes from friends, social networks and other sources. It's not always easy, but it's very important. Obviously, we live in the real world, and it's impossible to block out all negative information completely, but it's vital to do what we can to protect ourselves and our loved ones from informational poison as much as possible. In doing so, you will improve your quality of life and increase your competitive advantage. Every 8 days, we give our students and ourselves 2 tasks. 1. Control the quality of information consumed, and immediately turn off sources of negative information. 2. Don't watch any news for 24 hours. 5 reasons why watching or reading the news is harmful to us. Watching or reading the news is bad for your health. Doing so causes fear and aggression, reduces our creativity abilities and our critical thinking process. Every day, the media feeds us small pieces of rotten informational meat, steals our time and fills our minds with completely unnecessary information. 1. News is bad for your health. News is an informational poison to your physical body. Negative stories alter your body's biochemistry, as if these misfortunes that you see or read about were happening to you. When you watch a news piece about a car accident, your mind imagines that you were in an accident, and your body releases the hormones that correspond to this misfortune. Your digestive processes are disturbed, the immune system becomes stressed, and your level of happiness falls. 2. The news is a waste of your precious time. Information today is in overabundance worldwide. News is a garbage dump of negative, unnecessary information, and your time is an invaluable, irreplaceable resource. Time wasted is life wasted. We may think that simply watching the news does not take much of our time. Let's look at it together. 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes in the afternoon, 15 minutes in the evening, 15 minutes before going to bed. An hour is gone, and the loss of 1 hour a day is a loss of 15 days a year. Stop living out the problems of the nation and the world. Nations last for thousands of years, but you have only one life, and it is priceless. Invest your time in yourself and do not let politicians, corporations, bloggers and talking heads steal your precious time. Your time is your life. Nothing on earth is more precious than your time. 3. News stunts your creative and critical thinking processes. 4. The news acts like a hallucinogenic drug, making us apathetic and passive. 5. News allows the media to manipulate us, to enslave our consciousness. The news is stealing our freedom. News fills our minds with fear, aggression and worry about the future. Freeing yourself from informational poison is not easy, but it's well worth it. People sometimes ask me, how can you live without news? I answer with a smile, even if a world war began and thousands of nuclear-headed missiles were fired off, let me know about it 20 minutes after you tell everyone else, so that I'll have 20 minutes more of happy, joyful time before my death. And why worry about my death? I didn't worry about not being here for millions of years before I was born, so why would I worry about the fact that I won't be here for millions of years afterward? Chapter 12. Intellect Exercise, the Super Goal. Before I tell you, dear reader, how and why to perform the intellect exercise, the super goal, I want to explain what the super goal is and why we need it. For us, as intellect trainers, the super goal, the mission, is to stop the destruction of nature, to save humanity from self-destruction, through intellect training. After learning about our super goal, the average person will most likely think, I don't have the time or the energy to save humanity, it's more important and more realistic for me to deal with my own problems and tasks, to pay off debt, build a house, plant a tree, raise children, become a financially independent and successful person, and only then could I begin to think about saving humanity from self-destruction. But the truth of life is that in order to earn money, achieve financial freedom, harmony and happiness more quickly, you need to have a super goal. Let's look at just 3 reasons why it's vital that you have a super goal. 1. To improve your competitive advantage. 2. A super goal gives one super motivation, super strength, super energy. 3. The super goal is, simply put, one of the most important things in life. Let's look at each of these in detail. The first is competitiveness. Every morning when you wake up, you enter the ring of destiny. In this ring there is a daily competition for the best homes and vehicles, access to the best vacation resorts, the best hospitals and the best universities for our children and grandchildren. All those with any ambition and drive at all enter this ring of fate every morning. Thanks to the internet, physical distance is no longer an obstacle, and truly, people all around the world are now competing with one another. There is a finite supply of money, beautiful houses located in environmentally desirable locations, and so on. Therefore, one of your tasks is to become more competitive, smarter, stronger and more energetic than your competition. And in order for you to be successful, you need to have access to the pedagogical techniques, the intellect exercises which are superior to any of those used by your competitors. The super goal is a powerful exercise that only exists within the super jump system. Let me explain how it works. If we were to mentally climb to the height of an aircraft's cruising altitude and look downward, we would see that people have become like dots, or points, on the Earth. Each point has its own force vector. Let's imagine these vectors as red arrows. If people were to have the same levels of motivation and strength, then none of them would ever get ahead in life. The force vectors are defined primarily by our objectives. All of your competitors want prosperity, beautiful homes and vacation resorts, and fine university education for their children. It's beautiful. Being wealthy is beautiful, wonderful. Wealth is financial freedom. But everyone wants the same thing. We can conclude that almost all of your competitors have the same goals, and that these goals are sources of energy. The more you strive toward a goal, the more energy you have, the stronger the force vector. The great last emperor of the Roman Empire, the philosopher Marcus Aurelius, said, "A man is worth as much as the work he cares about." Everyone has almost the same goals: homes, wealth, financial independence. But in addition to these important and familiar goals, adopt a super goal for yourself. Inspire and convince yourself that you are developing and growing not just to make money and buy as many goods as possible, but also to save humanity from self-destruction, to ensure the future of your children and grandchildren. Your consciousness can argue with you and say things like, "Let's get serious, how can I stop the destruction of nature? I'm just a small cog in the huge mechanism of our civilization. I'm just a grain of sand on the road of history." It's not true. As Mahatma Gandhi said, if you want to improve the world, become part of that improvement yourself. When you take personal responsibility for the future of humanity, when you declare yourself on duty for our world, when you desire to, through intellect training, wake up and stop the destruction of nature, at that very moment you will begin to receive strength, energy and competitive advantages, far more than all of your competitors, and these will allow you to even more quickly earn that money, buy that beautiful house or car, and achieve to financial freedom. Remember how Muhammad Ali used to say to himself every day, "I am the champion, I am the greatest." To overtake your competitors, you'll find it most beneficial to add a super goal in addition to your own personal goals. I'm truly great, I'm on duty for our world, my development depends on the future of our civilization. The truth is that these are not words of flattery or self-deception. We are born geniuses, we are born in the likeness of God, but the post-industrial education system does everything to turn us into insignificant individuals. Our environment, our parents and the media inspire us with insignificant, false goals from childhood. Your goal is to graduate from school. Your goal is to graduate from university. Your goal is to make money, to create a family, to buy a house. These are important, beautiful goals, but for a cognizant human being, they are small and insufficient. If you can imagine a hierarchy of goals in our world, it has come to pass that man, created in the likeness of God and possessing infinite potential, has put himself below money, houses and cars. And by putting himself below money, man becomes a slave to money. Money dictates to him with whom to become friends, where to work, whom to marry. And it does not matter if you were a natural-born musician, designer, financier, architect, scientist or teacher. It's important to understand that there is no contradiction between the achievements of material wealth and spiritual wealth. There is no contradiction between buying a new home and saving humanity from self-destruction. On the contrary, the super goal only adds to your competitiveness. When you understand and realize that the super goal is the main key to the treasures of the universe, that the super goal is the main secret of the success of great athletes, businessmen, scientists, politicians, artists and musicians, you will immediately rise head and shoulders above your competition. The second reason for the critical importance of the super goal is that the super goal is super energy, super motivation, super strength. Your goal is not only a bright beacon in the night of the raging ocean of life. Your goal is not only the precise coordinates to which you pilot your ship of fate. Your goal is also a source of energy. The bigger your goal, the more energy you receive in pursuit of it. Look at the life of Nikola Tesla. He created more than 1,000 inventions, patents to devices that were far ahead of their time. According to eyewitnesses, Nikola Tesla had tremendous energy and strength of mind. From where did he get this energy? Of course, not through pursuit of the usual goals, to save money, to buy a house and a car, to pay off debt. Nikola Tesla dreamed of making the world better, kinder and brighter. It was this super goal that gave Nikola Tesla a tremendous amount of energy, an advantage over his competitors, and that allowed him to leave an indelible mark in history. Ask yourself, where did people like Martin Luther King, Muhammad Ali, Louis Armstrong and Abraham Lincoln get their strength from? All of these giants among men, these historical heroes, were motivated not by money, and not by the purchase of new products. Each of them wanted to make the world a better place. Each of these heroes was driven by a desire to help people, to leave a mark in history. They were driven by a super goal. Obviously, the bigger the goal, the more energy received in its pursuit. The goal in itself is a primary source of energy in life. I'll give you an example from the world of medicine. An elderly woman was dying in an intensive care unit. The doctors estimated that she had but a few hours to live. Suddenly, she learned that her son and daughter-in-law had died in a car accident. They were survived by her 2 little grandchildren, who had no one else in the world. What followed shocked the doctors. A dying, elderly woman got out of bed and, as if nothing had happened, and with an energetic gait left the hospital and went to raise her grandchildren. She went on to live another 15 years. Ask yourself, dear reader, why did such a miracle happen? Exactly, she had a super goal, to raise and care for her grandchildren. If before her death she had goals like most everyone else in the world, to earn more money or to buy things, these goals could not have given her nearly as much energy and strength. A super goal significantly increases your competitiveness and your willpower. The third reason for the importance of a super goal is to have a most important meaning of life, and to find meaning in your own life. As Einstein said, life has no meaning in itself. As Socrates said, know thyself, and thou shalt know the universe, and God. Many people suffer from depression, apathy, neuroses, alcoholism and drug addiction, solely because they do not see purpose in their own lives. When we are born, we grow, and during each period of life we find different meanings of life. When we were infants, the meaning of life was limited to warmth and maternal affection, to suck our mother's breast, to eat, to receive warmth and receive as many kisses and caresses as possible. Then, we grew up, and through the course of our development we desired new goals, interesting toys and friends. When we reached puberty, more new goals appeared. When we had children, more new goals appeared on our horizon, to raise them and to take care of them. Throughout the course of our lives, new goals materialize. However, as we were growing up, parents, endless streams of advertising and other sources inspired us with false goals. Our bleak, faceless society has inspired us to believe that our goals are wealth and material possessions. I want to stress once again, dear reader, that to be rich is all good and well, it is financial freedom, but it cannot be the ultimate goal, the meaning of life. Life lived solely for money, houses, and expensive cars is very boring and primitive. Such is a life that breeds depression, neuroses, psychoses, and apathy. The great scientist Viktor Frankl devoted his life to understanding the true causes of alcoholism, depression, and drug addiction. Here is the result of his research. 87% of people drink, not because they do not know that it is harmful. Alcoholics know much more about the dangers of alcohol abuse than non-drinkers. Those 87% of people drink because they do not have purpose in their lives. 95% of drug addicts have no purpose in their lives. 85% of those who suffer from depression, subdepression, neuroses, and psychoses do so because they feel that their lives have no meaning. As Einstein said, life has no meaning in itself. The intellect exercise, the super goal, is the strongest pedagogical technique in the super jump arsenal. If we look at what those who seek personal development and meaning in their lives today spend their time and money on, it is a variety of coaches, teachers, masters, gurus, through whose instruction they seek to learn how to save time, how to negotiate, how to be successful, how to gain an advantage over their competitors. If you look at the names of training sessions, seminars, and workshops, you will see 95% of them are devoted to how. But it is much more important to understand where we are going, why we live, what the meaning of life is. The exercise, the super goal, helps our students, whom we call winners, to find meaning in their lives, to understand their destiny, their mission on earth. As Socrates said, know thyself, and thou shalt know the universe, and God. How to perform the exercise, the super goal. Every 8 days, our intellect trainers and students focus their attention, turn on the inner higher person, observe themselves as if from above, and ask themselves the following important questions. What is my mission? What is the meaning of my life? What will remain after me? What kind of imprint I will leave in history? Every intellect trainer and student reflects on the importance of our common super goal, to stop the destruction of nature, to stop the destruction of the future of our children and grandchildren through intellect training. Our commonly held and well-meaning super goal on earth unites people of all nations, of all races and languages, religions and creeds. To save our common home from destruction. Is this not more noble, more important than money, houses, cars, and other goods? Our super goal of saving our only home through intellect training gives us a tremendous amount of super energy, super confidence, super power. Without a super goal, people become insignificant, bleak, and faceless. Not because they were born this way, but because they were raised by insignificant, bleak teachers who had no super goal. While a person is not marching through life carrying a banner proclaiming a super goal, so to speak, he or she lives an empty life. However, once a person realizes and accepts such a super goal with of all his or her heart, at that moment a truly sincere, big, new, bright, brilliant, loving, strong personality is born. 98% of people on earth are born brilliant, but unfortunately, in the world there are no honest, clear mirrors in which a young growing person can see this true scale, these true possibilities, these true powers. All of the clear and true mirrors have been broken. Today on earth there are craftsmen who produce only distortive mirrors in which person sees oneself as weak and insignificant. Imagine, dear reader, a giant, a true hero with infinite potential, who comes to a crooked mirror and sees himself as a small, weak nothing. Therefore, the super goal is to show mankind its true reflection in a large, clear mirror, which shows the true scale of a person's scope and potential. I am fond of one ancient legend in particular, which very accurately illustrates the idea of these clear, honest mirrors. Once upon a time a lioness lost her cub. The small cub was found by a herd of sheep. The cub grew up with the sheep, and learned to run away in fear from all adversity. He learned to bleat and shake with fear. Over time he transformed in large, young, strong lion. One day an old lion saw a strange scene. A large, strong, young lion, with his tail between his legs, running away with a herd of sheep. Catching up with the young lion, the old lion shamed him. How dare you disgrace our royal heritage and bleat like a sheep? Stand and roar like that lion that you are. But in response, the young lion trembled even more with fear and bleated even louder. The old lion grew angry, growled and shouted at the young lion, "Roar, or I'll tear you to pieces." But again the answer was the sound of a bleating sheep. Then the old lion brought the young lion to the shore of a clear, calm lake. The lake was smooth as glass. When the young lion saw his reflection in the water and realized who and what he truly was, the roar of the young king of the jungle resounded loudly throughout the land. The super goal is a smooth, clear lake in which you, dear reader, will see the king, the queen which lives in you. Only a super goal will allow you to fully reveal your genius, your potential. From birth, in each of us lives a tremendous super strength, a super genius. But if a person does not have a super goal, then this giant will sleep within our body his entire life, never waking up. According to the UN, 76% of the adult population of our world has lost its purpose in life, has lost points of support. We, the intellect trainers, do our best to return these people to their lost meanings of life, and the super goal is the most effective pedagogical method to help students to find themselves. As Lao Tzu once said, "He who has defeated another is strong, he who has defeated himself is 100 times stronger." Chapter 13. Super Jump, an excellent aid in the fight against depression and loss of purpose in life. In the 21st century, depression has become an absolute plague. In developed countries, 1 in 5 people suffer from varying degrees of depression. What's worse, the number of people suffering from depression is growing every year. The consumption of antidepressants continues to grow at an enormous rate. We as intellect trainers do not deal with the treatment of depression or mental illnesses. This falls under the competence of certified doctors and specialists. What we do is to help and inspire people to develop positive energy, a positive mindset. We help people develop their own optimism, confidence and enthusiasm. When Pyotr Silkin and I created Super Jump, our primary goal was to stop the destruction of nature, to save the future of our children and grandchildren through intellect training. But in the process of testing and using Super Jump, we made a remarkable random discovery. Remember the story about when scientists were looking for a cure for a certain disease? They suddenly found that the synthesized drug, Viagra, increased potency? By creating a daily charger of positive energy for adults, we discovered a side effect that helps to free people from depression. The side effect astounded us. In practice, we saw that when adults began to develop through the Super Jump system, the process of the development itself was another additional powerful source, a generator of positive, radiant energy. Naturally, we realize that positive energy alone is not enough to defeat depression and apathy. As I indicated earlier, I am a student of Viktor Frankl, and through my research of his works I learned that one of the leading causes of depression is a loss of purpose in life. During the process of intellect training, Super Jump gives students the realization of at least 3 very important purposes in life. The first is learning to be happy in and with yourself, and to generously share that happiness with the world. As we already know, happiness is not a goal, but on the same level of things such as memory, intelligence and willpower. Happiness can be easily developed, much easier than you might think. In Super Jump, we consider a person to be a generator of happiness and positive energy. 5 of the 8 Super Jump exercises directly or indirectly develop levels of happiness, joy and positive energy. Our Super Jump strategy is as follows. We don't fight negativity. We try to take as little notice of it as possible. To make this strategy easier to understand, imagine a dark, scary room. However, as soon as the light is turned on, darkness disappears from the room at a speed of 350,000 kilometers per second. Let's imagine our consciousness as a huge castle, and in this castle live both negative emotions, thoughts and feelings, as well as positive, bright, kind thoughts and feelings. Imagine that this enormous castle is the size of the entire universe, our own inner world. This domain is the fundamental battleground between light and darkness. Let's imagine negative thoughts and feelings as cold, evil villains, foul like rotten meat. As master of your castle, and you see this horde of villains consisting of hatred, anger, resentment, sadism, disappointment, ingratitude and cruelty. Also in your vast inner castle, there is an army of light, magnificent warriors standing as tall as the height of the universe, which are love, happiness, gratitude, joy, success, friendship, respect, courage, genius, a positive mentality. Before Super Jump, a person usually had the choice of leading either one army or the other. This approach demonstrates the old saying, "You have 2 wolves, good and evil." The one that you feed is the one that you'll become. Our super jump strategy is fundamentally different. We do our best not to take notice of dark thoughts, feelings, and emotions. Recall Newton's third law of physics, which tells us that the force of an action is equal to the force of the corresponding reaction. The more energy that you expend fighting hatred, resentment, anger, and other evils, the more space those things will occupy in your imagination and in your thoughts. The more you fight them, the stronger they will become. The more time you give to these things, the more territory these evil villains will conquer within your inner castle. Again, our approach is fundamentally different. We do everything we can to fill our inner castle with light, joy, and love, and do everything to pay as little attention as possible to dark, foul thoughts, feelings, and emotions. It's precisely the same principle contained in the quote often attributed to Eleanor Roosevelt: "It is better to light a candle than curse the darkness." Our approach in Super Jump is this: a person has the right to choose one option of the other, in the same way that you can't watch two different YouTube videos at the same time. Imagine that one of the videos shows terrible, negative, depressing scenes from people's lives, and the second video shows the power of knowledge, kindness, and love. The crucial decision of which video you watch is up to you. If you watch the negative video, your mind and soul become filled with cruelty, anger, hatred, fear, and resentment. If you choose the positive one, your inner world is inundated with happiness, love, joy, true greatness, personal development, and growth. The more time you spend watching videos filled with elements of darkness, the more you will immerse yourself in depression, sadness, and despair. The more you watch bright, cheerful, positive, life-affirming videos, the more light, happiness, joy, optimism, and energy will fill your inner world. A second important purpose in life is personal development. One of the chief laws of the universe is the human need for development, the pursuit of goodness, the desire to improve. These are hardwired in the human psyche. If we train the memory, it continues to be developed. If it is not coached, it fades away. If we train the power of the spirit, it grows and becomes stronger, but if we succumb to a destructive, corrupting way of life, the power of the spirit diminishes and disappears. Our metaphysical universe is very simple. If we develop happiness, we become happy. If we don't develop happiness, the resulting gray, boring reality turns our life into a Groundhog Day. We degrade and gradually, imperceptibly, sadness and despair turn our life into an endless swamp of depression, disappointment, and pain. Each of us has an important choice: to put in the work, to perform the intellect exercises, and to climb that reliable, sturdy spiral staircase, or to do nothing. If we do nothing, we slowly, gradually degrade. We become more stupid, weaker, more negative. We gradually turn into a vegetable. The strength of Super Jump is that we create an environment for personal development, and with the daily support of the intellect trainer, our students perform 8 simple yet powerful exercises which develop energy, a positive mentality, cheerfulness, and happiness. True happiness is impossible without daily intellectual, energetic, and emotional development. You could allow yourself a couple of days to relax and not perform the intellect exercises, but it's better not to do so. Look at your mobile phone and ask yourself a simple question: if I don't charge it every day, what will happen to it? Exactly. From a useful device, it will turn into a useless piece of glass, plastic, and metal. The same thing happens to a human if we don't charge the batteries every day. If we don't perform the intellect exercises, we fall into depression, sadness, and depression. The third thing that we can consider when contemplating the purpose of life is what I like to call the super goal, which is to stop the destruction of nature and save humanity from self-destruction through intellect training. Only in our developing Super Jump system is there such a powerful pedagogical technique as a super goal. One of the causes of depression, perhaps the most common, is that people have been instilled with false values. In fact, from a man created in the likeness of God, through industrialization, advertising, and bad examples, talent, genius, greatness have been killed and turned into a consuming entity. When a person thinks that the meaning of his or her life is to accumulate money and buy as many goods as possible, the person is likely to suffer from depression. Every day that we go to work, regardless of whether we work for ourselves or for a corporation or the state, we take our time and exchange it for money. With that money, we buy goods that break, quickly go out of fashion or become obsolete, and we throw them away. And our soul, superconsciousness, cries, because it understands that we work to create a landfill. We went to work, gave our precious time, got our money, purchased goods, and threw them into the landfill, and so it goes, all throughout life. 87% of the causes of depression are due to the fact that a person does not live his or her own life and does not understand it. But the superconsciousness, the soul, suffers and weeps because it understands that the meaning of life cannot be to accumulate money and to mindlessly buy goods. I may be going a little overboard here, but please don't judge me too harshly. I only want to share my views on the causes of depression for one reason. Maybe my new ideas will help someone to look at his or her own life in a new way, and perhaps that bit of introspection will provide the person with another opportunity to get rid of depression. I generally believe that depression is not a disease, but a signal system of the soul. Let me explain what I mean. The human skin has a multitude of painful receptors. If the skin is damaged, we feel acute pain. Imagine a cook who is in the process of cooking constantly experiences pain from burns, cuts, and similar injuries. To insulate himself from physical pain, he began to take pills that completely turn off the pain signals caused by the injuries to his skin. One day, our cook decided that he was going to retrieve a teaspoon from the bottom of a pot of boiling water. He put his hand into the water, but since he had turned off his pain receptors, he didn't feel that his hand was literally being cooked like a piece of meat. He wasn't able to get the teaspoon out from the bottom of the pot for a long time, but he felt no pain, due to the pills he had taken. By the time the cook finally realized what was happening, it was too late, he lost his hand. The boiling water destroyed his tendons and muscles. Using this example, I mean to show that our heartaches are often signaling systems. The soul, the superconsciousness, screams to us that we are not living our own lives, we are not being fulfilled. But instead of analyzing and understanding the causes of depression, we begin to take pills and turn off our signal systems. As time passes and the pills no longer work for us, we lie in bed, we don't want to go to work, we don't want to get up. We go to the doctor, and the doctor says, "You have a disease, depression. I have even stronger pills." We start taking even stronger pills. They last for a while, but the soul and superconsciousness, if not already dead, still continue to cry, scream, suffer, and plead with us to find our way in life, to find our mission, our destiny. Naturally, I'm aware that every case of depression has its own individual causes, and that not all are necessarily due to a loss of purpose in life. Causes of depression are manifold. There may be physical, physiological, macroeconomic, financial, and social reasons. Most often, depression is caused by a combination of reasons. I've personally seen many instances of everyday people who are tired of life, suffering from depression, who come to Super Jump for additional positive energy and step by step begin to grow and develop, begin to have energy, and then learn to manage thoughts, feelings, energy, and behavior. With every month, these people have more and more energy, and soon they hold in their hands the control panel of their mood, energy, and thoughts. They are free. Dear reader, mentally imagine yourself in the place of a person holding a remote control with which to control emotions, feelings, and energy. This remote has two buttons, black and white. Press the black button, and you'll turn on anger, resentment, hatred, and fatigue. Press the white button, and you'll turn on joy, love, happiness, and a wealth of positive energy. The choice is yours. Chapter 14. Humanity desperately needs 100 million intellect trainers. For the first time in the history of mankind, the most ordinary people, laborers, designers, doctors, pensioners, students, retired military, entrepreneurs, have set for themselves the most ambitious goal in the history of mankind, to stop the destruction of nature and to save humanity from self-destruction through intellect training. To solve this problem, we need to train 100 million good people in the profession of an intellect trainer in 3 to 4 years' time. To do this, we will use two forces, the power of knowledge and the power of money. My entire book is essentially devoted to the power of knowledge, adult pedagogy, the new system of personal development known as Super Jump, and the new profession of the intellect trainer. I am dedicating this chapter to the discussion of big money. To accomplish our most important, historical task, we need to earn hundreds of billions of dollars in a short period of time. My dear reader, judge for yourself, if adult teachers will earn humiliatingly little, as do teachers who educate children and adolescents, it would take 50 to 70 years to reach our goal of 100 million intellect trainers, and humanity does not have that much time left. Our civilization could be irreversibly destroyed in just 15 years. We, the first generation of intellect trainers, must train 100 million into the profession within 3 to 4 years. To inspire more good people to enter the adult education profession of an intellect trainer, the profession should become one of the best paying. We're not talking about greed or covetousness here. As every intellect trainer knows, we don't need to eat 100 times a day, change clothing 100 times a day, or drive 100 different cars a day. When we leave this world, we take nothing physical with us. But we also understand that as long as teachers' pay is not attractive, it will be difficult to inspire 100 million bright, ambitious, talented people to enter this profession. In order to create and train 100 million intellect trainers in 3 to 4 years, it's necessary to make the profession of the intellect trainer one of the most highly paid and prestigious in the world. Today, unfortunately, the teaching profession is one of the lowest paying on a worldwide scale. Ask yourself, what are teachers responsible for? They are responsible for the futures of nations. They primarily are responsible for the intellectual and moral levels of human development. With no offense intended to all of the other professions in the world, to me, teachers are the most important. The prestige and the level of respect associated with a profession can be raised only by repeatedly increasing wages. It's very difficult to attract talented and ambitious people to a low-paying profession. But as we create the world's first professionals in adult pedagogy, it will be easier for us to achieve financial success, because children's education is usually controlled by politicians, and politicians think only about themselves, their power, and their pocketbooks. Research shows that over the past 50 years, the quality of politicians and government officials has fallen dramatically. The blind lead the blind to the abyss, and the Titanic with our children, grandchildren, and loved ones every day sinks deeper into the cold, terrible, dark abyss of death. For us as intellect trainers, there is nothing on earth more precious than happiness, love, kindness, knowledge, respect, and gratitude. However, in order to save our civilization from disaster, we are now going to talk about money, or rather about how we will use the power of money to achieve the super goal. To paraphrase Martin Luther King, I have a dream. I have a dream that the world's first intellect trainers would become among the richest people in the world. I have a dream that they, through intellect training, would help billions of good, hard-working people around the world to break free of the matrix of ignorance and anger, to stop the destruction of nature, and give our beloved children and grandchildren a clean, blooming, beautiful land. Show me the money. You likely recognize the iconic quote that Cuba Gooding Jr. and Tom Cruise made famous in the 1996 film, Jerry Maguire. In our burgeoning Super Jump program, showing the money is very easy, so easy that even a child can see how it's possible to become a billionaire by doing good deeds. I'll break the explanation down into a few simple steps. Step 1. We need to find a problem with a solution for which people will pay us a significant amount of money. Step 2. There is such a problem. It's all around you, you just haven't noticed it. 50% of Earth's inhabitants today live with a deficit of energy. Billions of people wake up every morning feeling tired, broken, and devastated. Modern mankind needs to recharge its batteries every day. We are like mobile phones. If we run out of energy, we become unhappy, ineffective, useless to ourselves. Step 3. Super Jump is the solution to one of the most important problems of the 21st century, the lack of energy in billions of people. The Super Jump system is the first of its kind, the strongest charger on Earth. Step 4. This is a profession in which it's possible to earn a lot of money. As you pay a service provider every month for access to the internet, people will be willing to pay for the daily recharging of their batteries. Let's take an average cost of $100 per month. Considering that a person buying into the Super Jump program buys not only energy, but also a new quality of life, $100 a month is a fair price. Though there are far more than 2 billion people living with deficits of energy, for the sake of objectivity, we will do the calculation using 2 billion people. We multiply 2 billion people by $100 a month, we get $200 billion a month, or $2.4 trillion a year. In addition to this, there is the income from merchandising, the sale of franchises, and the IPO. Since we are the first in our industry, there is enough money for all active, hard-working enthusiasts. Our product is a happy, energetic person. I think we can agree that there is nothing more important and valuable than an energetic, happy person. I understand some skepticism such as, you can't expect to corner the entire market. That is true. But for ease of calculation, I'm not taking into account significant streams of income to intellect trainers such as merchandising, franchise sales, promotional events, and the IPO. 5 strategic advantages of Super Jump. 1. One of our most important strategic advantages is that we haven't created a new product, we've created a new industry. We have created the new profession of the intellect trainer, plus the platform for adult pedagogy, plus the strongest source of personal energy, Super Jump. 2. We currently have no competitors, and this gives us the opportunity to develop with great speed. 3. Super Jump has no borders, warehouses, or import-export complications. We do not need to obtain any licenses or permits. Super Jump is a 21st century business with endless potential for development. 4. Super Jump is already producing fantastic, grandiose results. Every third Super Jump student, within a month's time, already dreams of becoming an intellect trainer. In just a few days of beginning Super Jump classes, students receive a huge amount of positive energy of success. This result is the best advertising in the world, the best driver of promotion of Super Jump. 5. The opportunity to earn a lot of money. Our calculations show that over the next 3 to 4 years, 50 of the most active, talented intelligence trainers will become USD billionaires, and hundreds of thousands of intelligence trainers will become millionaires. Truly intelligent people desire to do good deeds, and to be financially independent. I hope that having read about the advantages, about the multi-trillion-dollar potential of Super Jump, that you can see the same thing that I see. The universe itself, the very kind winds of fate help intellect trainers to save humanity from self-destruction. Equally important is that our world will be saved by simple, good people with brave hearts. Engineers, doctors, students, programmers, entrepreneurs, and pensioners. Today, modern elites have very little kindness, humanity, and love left in their hearts. The world desperately needs billionaires and millionaires with kind, bright hearts. Today's opinion leaders are leading humanity to the abyss. It's obvious to anyone the world needs a new, enlightened heroes. As Gandhi said, if you want to improve the world, become that improvement. We as the intellect trainers improve both ourselves and our students with knowledge every day. In fact, we're very fortunate. What could be more beautiful than waking up in the morning and working to save our world? It's a wonderful thing to be on duty for our world. How we'll prepare 100 million intellect trainers in the next 3 years. A large amount of money will help us to achieve our goal of 100 million intellect trainers over the next 3 to 4 years. But in order to use the power of money for the development and salvation of mankind, we need to acknowledge that the power of money holds the advantage over the power of knowledge in our world today. To understand how it is possible to make the power of money work to save the future of humanity, let's go back 570 years in time to see how until Super Jump, the power of money was victorious over the power of knowledge on 4 separate occasions. We will see how certain scientific and technical discoveries were prevented from becoming tools for educating large masses of people, and on the contrary were turned into technologies of deception. By understanding the reasons, we will be able to develop a new strategy and force the power of money to work for the enlightenment of mankind, and not for subjugation or deception. For thousands of years, knowledge was passed through books. There was no internet, radio, or television. Books were copied by hand and were very expensive to produce. One book was worth a fortune. Because of this, books were not available to the masses. This changed in 1448, when Gutenberg invented the printing press, and it seemed that the world was then poised to enter an era of enlightenment. The cost of producing books dropped considerably, and naive idealists dreamed that humanity would soon rise to a new level of intellectual and moral development. But the opposite happened. The majority of those who purchased books consumers remained illiterate, uneducated dullards. Instead of educational, informative books, cheap, vacuous, silly and worthless novels were printed in large quantities. The power of money had won its first victory over the power of knowledge. Hundreds of years later, the brilliant Marconi invented the radio, and again naive idealists dreamed that truly wise philosophers, scientists and teachers would then be able to share their wisdom and knowledge with all of America, and with millions of people around the world. Unfortunately, the power of money won out over the power of knowledge for a second time. The easily misled, ordinary people demanded more and more soap operas from radio stations, more and more cheap, mind-numbing programs. Corporations, many of which peddled soap and laundry detergent, paid huge sums for advertising during these programs, which were wildly popular among housewives in particular. Nobody wanted to sponsor truly intelligent programs, as the market for such programs was very small, and was dying off. A few decades later, Vladimir Zavorykin invented the television in America. Again, naive hopefuls dreamt that it might be possible for brilliant, charismatic teachers of mathematics or physics to share their knowledge with the masses. And indeed, practically speaking, it would have been very simple to put the camera, light, and stage to use the brightest, most talented teachers to educate millions all once. But once again, it did not come to pass. The power of television was channeled toward the consuming public. And since their collective intellectual level was low, they demanded more soap operas, more vacuous serials, more stupid, deceptive programming. As in previous instances, educational programs simply died off and were completely marginalized. For the third time, the power of money triumphed over the power of knowledge. Decades later, a miracle happened. The internet appeared on Earth. Now, certainly, it seemed that the world would enter a golden age of knowledge, the development of mankind. Thanks to the internet, humanity would be able to rise to new intellectual and moral levels of development, to put an end to war, the destruction of nature, usher in an age of peace, creation, development, and prosperity. Indeed, at first, while the internet was relatively expensive and inaccessible to the masses, it was a very interesting and intellectually developing environment. The first internet users were scientists, programmers, and entrepreneurs, but even then the smartest of them wrote at the time, "Friends, enjoy our developing platform." As soon as the internet becomes available to all, we will see exactly what took place when television, radio, and the printing of books became commonplace. And so it happened, the power of money on the internet has won out. If you develop and produce an intelligent, educational channel, you will have very few subscribers, and if you are able to make any money from it at all, the amount will be negligible. But if the content is meaningless, entertaining, in which there is a lot of nonsense, dirt, scandals, and sweet deception, it will be watched by millions of people. To be honest, I also, like most naive idealists, believed that the birth of the internet would bring in a new era of creation, peace, democracy, freedom, an era of human development. I truly believed that the internet would bring humanity a golden era of knowledge, happiness, and prosperity. But it didn't happen, because the power of money overcame the power of knowledge. In promoting Super Jump, though, we've made the power of big money work for the development of all mankind. Let's look at how it works. The eighth wonder of the world. The power of compound interest will assist us in the development of our like-minded, amicable international family of intellect trainers. As Albert Einstein once said, compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. All true genius is simple. Genius and simplicity are as two sisters, holding hands. As my favorite financial genius Warren Buffett said, the passion to complicate things seems to be a perverted feature of human nature. On the contrary, our principle is to simplify things. In our new multi-billion-dollar super jump industry, we do not rely on the support of nation-states. We don't need to build expensive universities and educational institutions. The task of each ambitious intellect trainer is simple and doable: to train 10 new intellect trainers as quickly as possible, and motivate them to do likewise. Understanding that each intellect trainer has different, natural gifts, some reach this goal very quickly. For example, my friend and fellow intellect trainer Oleg Ryskov taught 15 new intellect trainers within the first month. And that's only one example. But as the speed of development of the new super jump industry has shown, this task is quite feasible for an enthusiast even with only average abilities. Compound interest in the service of good. The technology behind creating a team of 100 million intellect trainers is simple and reliable. Each intellect trainer teaches the profession of an intellect trainer to just 10 people. And each of the new trainers then do the same. Through 8 generations of such activity will be born 100 million intellect trainers, and through their efforts they will save humanity from self-destruction. The process of saving the future of our children and grandchildren is gaining momentum. We have more than 100 intellect trainers today. We need to create 6 more generations, and then the world will never be the same. In numerical figures, it looks like this: 100, 1000, 10, 000, 100, 000, 1, 000, 000, 10, 000, 000, 100, 000, 000 intellect trainers. Within these calculations, it's necessary to take into account the power of money. In just 2 generations, we will have 10,000 intellect trainers, which means that the world's first intellectual heroes will have substantial incomes, and as we know, big money earned by useful work is the best advertising, and these intellect trainers themselves will have money for advertising and promotion of this profession. And when the first intellect trainer earns his or her first $1 billion, millions of intelligent, good people will be attracted to the profession of the intellect trainer, and the speed of development of the team will increase even more. The pessimist will say that this is impossible, but the real growth rate of our team has already proven otherwise. Dear reader, I will not bore you with stories of how we will earn revenue from merchandising, franchise sales, and our IPO. The purpose of this chapter is not a business presentation of a new industry, but to show you the limitless opportunities that times of change open up for us. First of all, as it is said in one great book, the last shall be the first and the first shall be the last. Secondly, I wish to illustrate to you that by doing the kindest things possible you can become a billionaire. It's clear that those motivated to become intellect trainers will spend their billions to save our dying ecosphere. Thirdly, today, ordinary people all around the world with no startup capital or specialized business knowledge, but lit by enthusiasm and a desire to save our world, will have an opportunity to become millionaires and even billionaires. I've already lived a long life, I've seen a lot, and I understand that the great opportunities of Super Jump will be seen at first by only 1 in 1,000. But very soon, intellect trainers will earn their first dates with destiny, legitimately earn millions of dollars, and people of all walks of life will line up in long queues to become a part of the intellect trainer profession. Truly intelligent people understand that being among the first in quickly growing super jump industry represents a great success in itself, because those in first place in sports, in art, in business always get the gold, the respect and the glory. Chapter 15. How, specifically, does super jump save humanity from self-destruction? Dear reader, I am infinitely grateful to you for having read my modest book. It's very important that as many people as possible ask themselves the questions: how can we save our ecosystem? What can I do to save the future of my children and grandchildren? What will remain after I leave this world? What is the meaning of my life and death? Now is the time to discuss the most important thing, about what steps that we as intellect trainers take, specifically, to save our only home. In this chapter, I'll tell you in detail how Super Jump can save humanity from self-destruction. I'll intentionally repeat some of my examples, the goal being to strengthen and tune your attention to some of the most important historical facts and events. The purpose of my book is not to entertain the reader, but to wake him or her up. My book, Super Jump, is intended to be a blaring alarm clock that repeatedly sends out the alarm: wake up! Wake up! Wake up, we are approaching a terrible abyss. Wake up, my dear mankind, wake up, your children and grandchildren are in mortal danger. For ease of perception, I've divided this chapter into 3 distinct parts: cause, EFFECT, solution. Consider the plan to save the future of our children and grandchildren through the Super Jump system in these steps. Cause. The main reason for the destruction of our only home, the self-destruction of humanity, was identified by my teacher, Socrates. In the world there is only one evil, ignorance, and one only good, knowledge. Let's examine together what ignorance is. Ignorance is the consciousness, the mind, of a person who does not understand what his or her actions today will lead to tomorrow. A vivid example of the work of ignorance can be seen in a drug addict. A drug addict takes drugs with the intent of making himself feel good momentarily, and usually does not realize that these actions will kill him tomorrow. Let's imagine a man sitting on a high branch of a tree and chopping away at the base of that branch with an axe. To an observer from the outside, such a person is ignorant, he does not realize what he is doing. Similarly, humanity sits on the large branch known as our ecosystem, and cuts deeper and deeper into it every day. Humanity today carries on as if it were in a terrible drug intoxication. Every day it destroys its only home, and does not understand that in 15 years, its children and grandchildren will have nowhere to live. Humanity today is like a crazed drug addict, killing its children and grandchildren. How did this mass madness come to take over our Earth? The transformation of Homo sapiens into buying zombies began about 100 years ago. At that time, people were not yet slaves to personal consumption. 100 years ago, the Earth was generally inhabited by people who thought differently. When and why did we lose our reason? The final, total self-destruction of our civilization began at the very moment when automakers saturated the market with their products. People then thought, the automobile is a good vehicle and now I have one, it runs, why should I buy another car? Why should I throw away money? Why should I get rid of something that works well? The auto giants, however, thought quite differently. We've invested a lot of money and we need to continually maximize profits. They asked themselves a completely different question. How can we get people who already have a car to buy a new one? From there, auto manufacturers found ways to make people buy new cars and desire to dispose of their completely functional, old cars. The auto giants, with the help of advertising, began to infuse people who continued to drive an old car with a sense of inferiority. They, with the help of total advertising, began to drive a sense of pain into people's heads and souls. You're a loser, you're a jerk, you're an outcast, you have an old car. And if you want to become a worthy, respected man, go out and buy a new car as soon as possible. But how could consumers buy a new automobile if they had no money? Why, run to the bank, take out a loan and buy that new car, urgently. So that naive buyers didn't doubt that they were buying a new car, manufacturers began to append new lights, lines and other meaningless frills to the new cars almost annually, so that technically it was the same vehicle as the previous year's model, but with a different appearance. This brilliant idea, to make people buy what they do not need, was picked up by manufacturers of clothing, accessories, cosmetics, perfumes and everything else that it's possible to spend money on. The final transformation of a reasonable person into a buying person took place in the 8th decade of the last century. This mutation of the public consciousness is well demonstrated by one well-known case. During the 1970s, the Shah of Iran ordered a considerable number of military Gelandewagen from Mercedes-Benz. By the time that the order was fulfilled, a revolution had taken place in Iran, and the Shah's government could not pay for the vehicles that had been produced. The management of Mercedes-Benz was shocked and in a quandary about what to do with the vehicles. They knew that consumers in Europe had no need for such a vehicle. In Germany there are no pits and ravines to drive through. But since these SUVs, as they came to be called, had already been produced, they were displayed in showrooms throughout the country. What followed seemed incredible. From the point of common sense, the Gelandewagen began to sell like hotcakes. At this point, perceptive sociologists realized unmistakably that consumers were not interested in the real properties of goods. That thanks to relentless advertising, people willingly paid for the illusion, the myth, the image. So, over the past 100 years, the once reasonable man has become a buying man. And so began humanity's path toward the deadly abyss of self-destruction. Our common madness is supported by more than $500 billion that corporations spend on brainwashing hesitant buyers. Once again, the purpose of any advertising effort is to mentally injure or humiliate a person, to incent him or her to buy unnecessary goods. Is a general $500 billion advertising budget a lot of money, or not? Let's compare. For example, in order to give all children in the world a free primary education, only $24.5 billion per year would be required, and to eradicate hunger from the face of the earth, the UN estimates that $50 billion would be required, and more than $500 billion is spent solely on advertising. Let's objectively look at a picture of the world, and ascertain the goals, the meanings, and the values that humanity pursues. Obviously, everyone is different, but in looking at the world from a general perspective, we can see where our civilization is going, and why. Question 1. What is the meaning of our time on Earth? The meaning of life to our ancestors was extremely clear: to survive, not to freeze, not to be eaten, not to starve. And what are we doing to advance the goals of humanity today? Fighting, killing our fellow human beings, destroying the ecosystem, our home, embalming ourselves with alcohol, drugs, anger, hate and depression? This existence can be described in 3 words: eating, sleeping, dying. It is obvious that today, just as we need the air that we breathe, humanity needs to refocus on truly meaningful goals, values and ideals. We will talk about them further. Ignorance is the behavior of people who do not understand the consequences of their actions. Let's have a look at the consequences to the mass madness taking place in the world today. Consequences. 100 years ago, 1 billion people lived on Earth. Today, there are 7.5 billion people in the world. During this time, energy consumption per person has increased 1,000-fold. 100 years ago there were no air conditioners, and 10 times the energy was required to cool a room by 1 degree in temperature than to heat it by the same amount. 100 years ago, 95% of the goods that are sold in the world we live in today were not in existence. There were no commercial airplanes, no televisions, no vacuum cleaners, refrigerators, computers and so on. If we were to quantify the increased stress on our world's ecosystem, 1 billion people became 7.5 billion, and each person consumes an average of 1,000 times more energy. Multiply the population growth by the increase in energy consumption and we get 75,000 times increase the stress on our ecosystem. The solutions. How do we as intellect trainers stop the destruction of ecosystem using the super jump system today, and thus ensure the futures of our children and grandchildren? I'll tell you about just 3 solutions, about 3 creative processes that we have already launched. Otherwise my modest, average-sized book would turn into thousands of pages of text and it would be read by only a handful of people. I'll show you that within these 3 solutions, there are actually more than 10 developing processes. What's most important is that we are 100% convinced that they work in practice. Moreover, the fact that we are even now observing these solutions spread rapidly throughout the world through our intellect trainers gives us confidence that humanity has a chance for a happy, long, newfound life. The speed of the growth of new intellect trainers is direct proof of that. Solution number 1: to urgently develop people's awareness. The main problem with the destruction of the ecosystem is in our minds. We do not understand today that we have only about 15 years left to the edge of the deadly abyss. God forbid that the scientists and I are wrong. The consciousness of most people is possessed by deep, dark ignorance, and the effective cure for this malaise is super jump. How can I be so sure? Everything is quite simple. The antiquated methods of adult development simply do not work. If they did work, we would not be surrounded by the many terrible wars that are taking place today, and we would not be in the process of destroying the futures of our children and grandchildren with such fervor. Only super jump, today, and in a short period of time, teaches people to manage their thoughts, their feelings, their energies, and to productively model their behavior. Only super jump embraces one of the most important pedagogical techniques, the super goal, which is to stop the destruction of the fragile ecosystem through intellectual development. Only in super jump do the students gradually realize that they are on duty for our world, and that only by improving yourself do you improve the world. As the modern elite, consisting of politicians, businessmen, athletes and actors is leading our civilization to self-destruction, it will be ordinary people who embark on a path of development of consciousness who will save our world, but even more so at the forefront will be the intellect trainers, those more prosperous and agile of mind who will be practicing a new approach to human development through super jump. Today, 1% of the world's population owns about 90% of the wealth, and this 1% has the greatest responsibility for our future. The workers, the doctors, the programmers do not have the greatest responsibility for the self-destruction of humanity, but those who are, in general, good, hard-working people playing the game called, "Who is more, in," or, "I'm above you" on the Forbes' list. The problem with the elite is not greed, but in the game itself, in the competition. Most wealthy people are well aware that we do not eat 1,000 times a day, we don't wear 1,000 clothing outfits a day, we don't have sex 1,000 times a day. The whole problem is the game. Solution number 2: to use super jump to turn people from consumption to development. I'll tell you how it happens in practice. As soon as an adult student of super jump begins to perform our 8 exercises in a circular fashion, he or she begins to generate a huge amount organically occurring positive energy, and pleasure received from such a development is much greater than the pleasure of shopping or consuming. The person, previously existing as only a consumer, turns into a generator of happiness. And most importantly, the student becomes the master of his or her happiness, the happiness which had been taken away by corporations through false advertising. Super jump is a joystick with which to control your thoughts, your emotions, your energies, your behavior models. As soon as this joystick is taken over by our inner higher person, we become more conscious and free from other people's opinions, and cannot be forced to spend our precious time and energy buying unnecessary goods and chasing false ideals. Super jump frees a person from the matrix of ignorance, anger and despair. Solution number 3: engaging in NEW, more interesting, games. At the heart of the games that adults play are values, meanings and goals. It's obvious even to a fool that the values, meanings and goals of humanity which are popularly advanced to us today are obsolete, and they cannot protect us from the terrible, destructive processes that are devouring our future, and the evil, invisible hand working even now to destroy the futures of our children and grandchildren. Here are just some of the solutions that are already being implemented by intellect trainers today. 1. To teach people to produce 100 times more happiness than they experience. Imagine, dear reader, a world in which people live 100 times happier than they do now. Just think, is it possible to force such people to buy unnecessary goods? Of course not. A happy person, a true generator of happiness, will not fall for the psychological and cultural fallacies of buy more goods, and you will be happy, or accumulate more money, and you will be happy. As a result, the consumption of goods will be moderated, and more people will be striving to develop their infinite intellectual potential, and focusing on the things that truly matter in this world. 2. To unite warring groups of people and citizens of all nations with a common ideal of saving the dying fragile ecosystem. This is the only lasting way to stop war and the collective self-destruction of our civilization. 3. To teach people that it's possible to experience more satisfaction through development along the principles of super jump than they could ever experience through alcohol or drugs, and in so doing, save tens of millions of good people. 4. People thrive on competition. The era of new competition should be not who has more products, for the more the goods produced, usually, the greater the destruction of nature, but who among us experiences more happiness. The more a person experiences happiness from development, the less he or she buys unnecessary goods, the more the person preserves our precious ecosystem for our children and grandchildren. 5. It's important to inspire thinking adults with big ideas and big goals. And what could be more important, more noble, than the preservation of the beautiful world that we live in for those who are to follow us? Dear reader, I thank you very much for reading my book to the end. If you like to solve the deepest mysteries, solve the most difficult problems, if you have a desire to leave an indelible mark in history, if you understand that in 15 to 20 years the most terrible fate can befall our civilization under the blows of the hammer of human madness and ignorance, I urge you to join the most amicable, international family of intellect trainers. Even if you have no desire to engage in adult pedagogy or to teach, you can contribute to our common cause through the application of your talents and energies. Any support you give increases the chances of survival of our children and grandchildren. I sincerely wish you and your loved ones health, good fortune, prosperity and success. Intellect trainer Vladimir Dovgin. Postscript. Many times, I've asked myself the question, what is it that motivates me? Money? A desire to leave my mark in history? Personal ambition? A desire for glory? Why have I for many years without stopping for weekends or holidays sacrificed my time, money and health to develop and promote our super goal of using super jump to stop the destruction of nature and to save humanity from self-destruction? To better understand myself, I came up with such a test. When I'm alone, I close my eyes and imagine this esoteric exam. If God gave me a choice today, that if I were to die right now, and my name would be forgotten and no one would ever remember it, but super jump would stop the destruction of nature and save humanity, would I accept such a proposal? Every time I answer myself without hesitation, yes. Why do I answer so confidently? There are things more important than my own life. I know for sure that super jump is my way, my destiny. I wake up every morning a happy person. I've found my mission in life. I want to take this opportunity to express my sincere gratitude to my family and friends. Thank you for supporting me and understanding me, for forgiving me when I was not with you when you needed me very much. I apologize for the times that I chose super jump over you. The reason is this: with super jump, humanity at least has a chance of survival, and without it, I truly believe that there is no chance. Without super jump, our civilization has no future, which includes my family, that you have no future. I know that most people do not yet understand how bad things are with the Earth's ecosystem. They do not see or hear. Today, humanity stands on the precipice of a terrible abyss, one step to disaster. But, fortunately, I'm not alone. We have intellect trainers who become more and more in number every day. Please don't think that I'm bragging, but it's true, only the intellect trainers today are fighting on a massive scale to save humanity from self-destruction. And to you, my dear friends, my fellow intellect trainers, I express to you the greatest gratitude coming from the very depth of the happiest heart that loves you. I have the honor, my dear friends, of saving the world with you.